Today's show is brought to you in part by Lisa Mattress. Lisa was founded with a simple goal to help people sleep better. And with an innovative direct-to-consumer online strategy, Lisa's 100% American-made mattresses are challenging the traditional mattress industry. Forbes even named it a top 20 startups to watch. See for yourself why everyone is raving about Lisa by trying it in your home 100 nights risk-free. Right now, you can get $75 off a Lisa mattress with the offer code BOMBCAST at leesa.com. Here we are, it's the Bombcast for February 28th, 2017. It's the last day of the month. It's a short month.
Wait, you're not Brad.
No, I'm not Brad. Brad Shoemaker is out sick.
What is going on here?
This is Giant Bomb, the next generation.
Oh,
starts now.
All right.
I am joined by Drew Scanlon down there at the controls.
Hi. Yes. I'm over here.
His final episode of the Bombcast as well.
That you're paying me for.
That we're paying you for.
Yeah.
Right. Good call. Good call. We should start paying guests. That's a good point. From the Video Game History Foundation and friend of the site, Steve Lynn.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Finally got you in here.
Yeah,
I feel like we've been talking about you for years here and there.
Right. The specter, kind of standing
just
over.
like the shadow, the dark power behind the site that shows up. It's like, here's a copy of Windjammers. Check this out.
Yeah. Well,
and then
Tetris Battle Gaiden, Windjammers. And it's all my arbitrage business.
Yeah, it's just using this soft power to make sure games get remade.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very smart. Very smart.
It's playing the long game. I mean, Windjammers I gave you a couple of years ago.
Exactly.
Right? So it took a long time.
For France to really make it a reality.
That's right.
And
French Windjammers.
Yes. And from the 8-4 Play podcast from 8-4 proper, John Riccardi's here.
Hi.
How's it going?
Having us back.
Yeah, good to have you back. And Mark McDonald of Enhanced Games is here.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
How you doing?
Good. Real good.
Yeah.
GDC is happening.
It is.
It is. I mean, everything is happening right now. It is ridiculous how everything is lined up. Usually this is kind of an intense industry time because it goes from DICE to GDC to PAX. And so if you're the type of executive that does all three of those things, just it's hangover after hangover after hangover after hangover. But none of us are Dave Lang, so we're all doing fine.
Right.
But also on top of that, of course, the Switch is out in a couple of days here, a few days.
This is a big, I feel like normally after the holidays, normally it's been headed this way for a while, but this year is like an embarrassment of riches. There's literally just not enough time from one release to the next. Resident Evil 7 just came out. Now you have basically on top of one another Nier, Horizon, Zelda, Neo.
I haven't even gotten to Yakuza 0 yet.
Right, yeah. I started on Yakuza 0, and then Neo showed up. I'm like, well, what's this about? I'm like, oh, this is okay, all right. And then Horizon showed up. I'm like, okay, well, now I'm gonna review Horizon and get into that. And then the Switch stuff started showing up.
I feel like Sony needs to step in and not allow games to come out that close together. Those kind of amazing level games. Yeah. I'm in the same boat. I have no time to play any of this stuff.
Yeah. It's been awesome though. Like a really refreshing change of pace. Like normally this time of year, it feels like it's like here's like 3 things that got delayed, and then nothing. So it's been nice. I don't know. It's definitely a strange time, but yeah, Horizon is out today. We talked about that game last week, but
sounds amazing.
Yeah.
You guys made it sound really amazing. I'm psyched for it.
I had a really great time with it, and it's I don't know. It was the thing we kept hearing from people, because we started talking about it last week, and the review ran last week, and there were people that were definitely like, "Oh, I'm gonna go buy this game." Wait a minute, why is it's not out yet?
Yeah, I said the exact thing. Like, wait, it's not out yet.
Yeah,
right? It's coming out GDC week.
Yeah,
the day after we launched the Video Game History Foundation. That's awesome.
Yeah. Right. So the Video Game History Foundation. Yesterday was the day.
Yesterday was the day.
Big long live stream up the
Congrats.
street.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So that's big. I've been waiting for it for a while after kind of having heard a little bit about it.
Right.
Can you talk about what's the goals? I saw Frank's video,
right,
and all that stuff. But what's the what's the pitch here? Because I've seen other people trying to preserve games. Like, what's the thing?
Our pitch is really accessibility. It's getting everything that's sort of in a physical format right now, or stuck on discs and everything, into a format where everyone can access that and use it for their own research purposes. Whether you're a journalist or an academic, or you're doing some sort of research on whatever subject, you're able to go to this archive that is kind of fully tagged and categorized, so it'll help you. Like our first thing we put up was actually all of our NES launch material, and this goes from kind of press releases we have all the way to articles in like home furnishing magazines that were the only people that covered the NES launch, right?
Okay, right, yeah.
And things like from CES and E3, or not CES. So it's getting all that out there. We have our own sort of archive that we're in the process of digitizing and getting out there, but we're also doing things like taking a lot of our physical artifacts and getting them into museums. I think one of the big confusion points was, are you guys running a museum?
Right.
But no, we might have like sort of a
not yet.
Not yet. Well, like a library, but I mean, really, we want to get it into the places like the Strong Museum of Play, Smithsonian, Library of Congress, National Video Game Museum, Computer History Museum, people who have actually like curators and librarians.
Right.
And one of the sort of criteria for that is having accessibility. So if I do want to see these artifacts, I can do that and go to these places and either see them on display or access them kind of in the back, just like the regular academic groups.
And then ideally have them out there digitally for anyone anywhere who wants to see some
exactly.
of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we've been hunting things down. Like famously, Frank went up to North Carolina, or North Dakota, to get where in North Dakota is Carmen Sandiego, and had to interview all these people, right, and get a physical boxed copy that Doug Carlson didn't even know existed, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a lot of really crazy stuff.
Was that like local version that was only available at schools or something?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that,
It was one state, and it was like kind of a pilot program, and all the clues are written by like 4th and 8th grade teachers in North Dakota, and they made their own almanac too. So it was just, Broderbund thought, hey, we've got this template, we can just like shove in clues, right? And it can be where in Carmen Sandiego is, where in Ohio is Carmen Sandiego. But
did you see recently there was like a little NHK documentary actually about people preserving video games? This was in Japan specifically, but so those guys are going back, taking the cassette games and actually like digitizing them, making them so the games themselves are actually preserved. Are you guys into any of that?
Yeah, we are. So physical artifacts, we have we're doing everything from like dumps and not just sort of regular sort of the like retroed and things like that, but similar to what BU is doing in terms of more specific and detailed dumps. And then the physical artifacts themselves are going to those who have experience in analyzing those and whatever they need to do. We don't have a whole lot of Japan coverage, quite frankly. We're mostly U.S. domestic and European. But hopefully through this, we can start funding like grants and people to do research into these areas. I think the last section is the oral histories. We've talked to tons of developers. We have lots of connections, and we're really trying to get people to tell us these stories. Famously, a lot of people forget. We asked them things from like 30 years ago. Right. And so what our documentation helps us do is really set the table and say, like, here's what you were doing before, here's who you were working with, here's some of the material, maybe it'll spark some memory, and then a lot of times that does.
Well, yeah, if those people were in their late 40s or 50s, I mean, 30, 35 years ago, I mean, there's also, they're getting on, right? Not just forgetting, but those people pretty soon are going to start disappearing.
Yeah, well, in fact, that's already happened a couple times, but I mean, everyone is still alive, right? And one thing we talked about is like if you look at like the silent film era, right? Like 85% of that stuff is just gone because no one thought to save it, no one thought to talk to anybody because it's like, oh, we're all into talkies now. The jazz singer is the new thing. We have the opportunity to preserve that stuff now, and having folks dedicated to that is really the mission of the Video Game History Foundation, and not just keeping it for ourselves. Everything we get, we're trying to get out to as many people as possible. So
yeah. That's cool. I mean, that's like having been doing this for a good long time. Like, I feel like I've amassed a weird collection of nonsense. I mean, you guys have been at this for just about as long, but then moved to country at some point. So I imagine at some point you pared a lot of things down. But
John you still have your attic, right?
I do. Of my stuff back home at my family's
You never
house.
threw anything away.
I love it whenever you go home. I like open up boxes from the attic.
Make sure I have like a day with nothing going on so I can just go through stuff and take pictures of it. Someday I want to like get it all archived. Like I enjoy taking pictures of it. I've talked to Frank already. I'm probably going to pass you guys like a bunch of stuff that like, because I just used to keep like back in the day when we would first go to trade shows and stuff and we didn't know any better, you just take anything,
any flyer.
That was that was heartbreaking because now that this is happening, it's cool because I have some stuff. I'm like, okay, well, great, like let's do it. But I had so much more because like going to like CES in like '92. I was like 16, so I'm grabbing everything. And then it's like look at the hotel room; it's just a stack of press kits like surrounding me. I'm like, we have no way to ship this. So there was one night, it was me, a couple of the guys I was with, Glenn Rubenstein and Ryan McDonald, and then Andy and Paul from Game Informer.
Nice.
Did some drinking and decided to just like start making paper airplanes out of all these press kits and just throwing them out of the window of our hotel room into the parking lot below. We woke up the next morning, it was just covered in stuff. Because you get to a point where you're just like, I don't know, we just spent $300 on pizzas. Let's throw pizza out the window. We're idiot kids. And so it was a good thing we were checking out the next day, I guess, is the point there. But
so excited for E3 this year.
Yeah.
With those 15,000 public people. It's going to be exciting.
Well, so that's, I mean, not to like preempt the news, but to like get it, like, so some purported leaked show floor plans got out showing Microsoft having a smaller area. But I feel like with this whole change for E3, like none of it seems like meaningful right now because who knows if they're going to have a separate, like a Gamescom style, like business area, public area, or whatever. It's hard to.
One of the things that I was wondering is a lot of people, excuse me, made a lot of stuff of Microsoft moving their press conference to Sunday of E3, but.
Everybody changed their flight plans.
But if I'm Microsoft, do I not have my own totally separate event before E3 to talk about Scorpio when I own the entire thing, like PS4 style?
Yeah, like I think that. I mean, if you look at the PlayStation experience and you look at Sony's success at kind of carving out their own window for news, it would make sense for Microsoft to do the same thing at some point in the year. I don't know if it's before E3 because EA is already. Like they're going to do EA Play again,
right? But I mean, but when Sony announced the PlayStation 4 proper, right? They did their own event because they could just completely own it. And even with the Xbox One, right? That was before they did something kind of before E3.
Is that not what their press conference is probably going to be though? Just like a whole Scorpio thing, more or less.
No, but I'm saying if they're going to treat this like an actual new console, if it was me, it seems like the conventional wisdom is anymore. You don't just put that into your E3 press conference. You get your own thing where you have a
separate event and or have people up to Redmond, or that's what they did for the original Xbox One reveal.
Right.
Was have people go up there.
So, I mean, that's just a random thought, but I was wondering if that's, okay, well, we're going to have that thing this year before E3 anyway. We don't need quite as much. I don't know.
I don't know. The press conference slots, as I understand it, are kind of like wrangled by the ESA. I think EA is operating outside of that completely, but but the Microsoft press conference slot was typically like that was the ESA's doing was you're going to go this time, and they built it around that. But I don't know if them going a day earlier means they're suddenly outside of the ESA jurisdiction, or if
is Sony still Monday night like usual, or
they haven't said. I have to imagine.
I wonder if part of it is just wanting to get a little distance from Sony to have a little more time, because as soon as always been Microsoft happens, and then as soon as Sony hits, kind of all the Microsoft news just sort of fades away, and everybody's talking about Sony.
And it means that like Microsoft can't have like gameplay at the end of their press conference because people run out of there. It used to be you'd run out of there to go to EA, then go to Ubisoft, and then go to Sony.
Right.
Like EA's plucked out of there. Ubisoft presumably is still somewhere in the middle of that.
Oh, we can play laser guns again.
Yeah.
Did that game ever come out? What was that?
It was. I don't know if
that laser tag thing.
The laser thing.
When they were running through the press conference.
Right. Yeah. Like it was them saying that they were going to get into toys.
Yeah.
And put these out, but I wonder. I don't.
Was that a vitality sensor thing that just kind of faded away?
It's like maybe at some point they were like, "Oh, we just did that to throw off the potential acquisition stuff." Like, "Oh, look at these crazy like laser tag. We're not going to buy their company, whatever." And maybe they just never had to put it out. I don't know. Yeah, it's E3 is obviously going to be really interesting this year to see where that stuff goes.
Well, I mean, there's always been people there who, really our industry.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
It's
absolutely.
not hard.
Yeah.
There's not really that huge line that you would see in front of these booths. It's like, wait, who are all these people?
Right.
Like, yeah,
So-
the people that would
For a T-shirt.
Yeah,
as
they'll
you
def-
mentioned
yeah,
last
right,
time.
right.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
yeah,
time to
jumping
like
for a
line up for
t-shirt, right.
Warner
Yeah.
to sit and watch a guided demo and get a T-shirt for it. Like that's, I mean, whatever. That's cool. Like I liked seeing those demos as well, but I don't know that I would wait in line for hours to see them.
Right.
Yeah, some of that stuff is pretty weird. Well, great to have everybody here. Why don't we get into some actual video games we potentially have been playing?
Yeah.
You don't have to wait for the cue to
No,
finish. You
yeah,
can just
no.
keep talking.
It was mostly like I needed to say something to make sure the queue happened. Otherwise, we'd just keep rolling. So Horizon's out. We talked a little bit about that.
That's pretty much all I've been playing.
Yeah.
Just to get that out there.
What do you think?
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Digging it?
I'm maybe 8 hours in or so. I turned off there are 2 ways that the waypoints can work. It's like as the crow flies
Right.
waypoint, like it's right over there. Like figure out
Or like
how to get
or
there.
like road pathing.
Yeah, or like Google
Yeah,
Maps. Like
yeah.
you turn here and then turn here. So
okay.
it defaults to the Google Maps way, but I turned it to as the crow flies, so that now I'm kind of making my way through the world, and that's I don't know, that's
Kind of
like
feels more
my
like you're
own
exploring
quest.
a little
Yeah.
bit instead of
Yeah.
I did want to ask you, Jeff, though, like there are main quests, there are multiple main quests that you can have
Right.
at any given time. Did
Yeah.
you find yourself like pursuing one to completion, or would you flip back and forth between 2?
It would usually be dependent on how a quest ended. If a quest ended and I was like, man, I really want to see what's next, I would definitely do the next link in that chain. And so there were definitely cases like it seems like the end of the main quest lines will result in one of the bonuses you get being a skill point.
Okay.
I feel like most of the ones that are kind of capping off a quest line at the end, you're like, here's a skill point. So you kind of know like, okay, that's definitely wrapping that up. Now maybe I can check out something else. But I mostly just kind of would look at the map and go like, okay, I've got a side quest near here. I've got this near here and kind of just bop around. But eventually, probably about 2/3 of the way through the story, I got very invested in the story. So I just immediately started focusing on main quests to see it through. The game's a lot longer than I thought it would be, for sure. I reached a point with that game where I was like, oh, this is definitely the last mission. Like, look, I'm going underground doing this thing. And like, oh, no, there's like way more after that. So, yeah.
Does it feel padded, though? Or is
No, it doesn't. Okay. Like, usually when games do that, I get pretty bummed out. Like, oh, man, this is the spot where they should have wrapped it out. It's just kind of dragging now. But they had enough information and enough things to reveal to the player to make that all work. So, yeah, I ended up digging it.
Hearing
Nice.
you guys talk about the story stuff, and again now is the part that surprised me. Like I had no doubt Guerrilla was going to make a gorgeous game, and it had looked, gameplay wise, it had looked interesting from E3 and stuff like that. So I wasn't sure, but I was open to that. But then I was very much surprised to hear, that you got into the story aspect of it.
Yeah, because it starts out with this kind of just like tribal, like it hints at the world below and in some really tantalizing ways, but at the same time, you're seeing kind of this tribal conflict type stuff and that civilization, and you're like, this is.
I was just like, oh, it's like robot dinosaurs, like really, and I was like, kill zone,
and you start to think like, oh well, they're clearly setting up for a trilogy, so obviously this game's just going to set up a bunch of stuff and never make good on it.
Right.
So having them actually make good on it was really this part. Was like, oh man, they did some great stuff.
I was super happy to hear that, and you were talking about the voice acting was good, and there were good characters in it and stuff like that.
It's sound, and then I guess like that's the engine for Death Stranding.
I guess they chose, it was a good choice.
Yeah,
I mean they went around, they did the tour of
right. Yeah,
America or of everywhere.
Yeah,
Koji Pro did, and I guess they chose well.
That game you could see, and not that Death Stranding will be this type of game, but you could see an MGS5 style game on that engine going pretty well.
Was it you guys talking about though that the lip syncing is a little
in
weird
some spots?
sometimes?
Like it's like main mission stuff is good,
Yeah.
but then the further off the path you get, you run into some stuff that just doesn't line up at all, or it feels like a second off.
It can look pretty Skyrim-y.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sometimes.
It'll be interesting to see like if because that seems like it would be something that would be important to like Death Stranding,
right,
or something like that's going to be really story heavy. So it'd be interesting to see. Like,
it seemed like the engine was definitely capable of great lip sync,
right?
But it just didn't. It wasn't consistent. So
I'm glad to hear you guys like the voice acting in the story though, because like I was really excited for this game, and then I saw a clip maybe 3 weeks ago of like just really terrible. Like this conversation between a guy and a girl is really terrible. The voice acting was bad and the lip sync was really bad. And I thought, okay, this game's not for me. Like it literally was that bad. And then it must have been like a pre-release thing or something.
I wonder,
because
yeah.
since then everybody's been saying good things about it. So now I'm kind of getting hyped again. I think I'm gonna pick it up this week.
It's neat. It's really neat.
How long did it take you to get through the story?
About 30.
30 hours.
Yeah. I did a fair amount of side stuff along the way. You could probably get through it faster than that. Well, yeah, you could definitely get through it
That is
faster
a
than
beefy game, yeah.
But yeah, like I said, it was longer than I thought it would be. Mark, you been playing much of anything lately?
Have you heard the good news about Resident Evil 7, Jeff?
Oh God!
I say that in the Jehovah's Witness.
Came to my door and handing me a pamphlet.
I gave it the office.
But before I left, I was playing the DLC 2, which actually is not that great, but I'm such a fan. I feel like the crazy person. I shout it from the rooftops. Any person that I can corner, I talk to about Resident Evil 7. Not Resident Evil 7 normal. Resident Evil 7 playing it your first time through in VR. There's some caveats. It has to be, at night, alone, no subtitles, headphones, all of that stuff. It's just like a transcendent experience is the only way I can describe it.
Capcom is not paying him for this, by the way. Like he had a party in Japan where he invited a bunch of us out because he wanted people. He got a dark room at their offices, the Enhanced offices, and made time slots for people to come and play Resident Evil alone in the dark under Mark's conditions. His very specific conditions.
Mark's rules.
That's right.
It's a separate.
I mean, it's just not. It's like watching a horror movie in the daytime. To even have another person in the room, I think spoils it because it grounds you in a way that you can just completely lose yourself in that game. And that's not saying that the game is not without its weaknesses. It is. I think it's pretty well documented by now without spoiling anything. The last third of the game is the weakest part of the game. But it really goes, to use that phrase that's going to get thrown around a lot in the next few weeks, especially I think with Zelda, is going back to its roots. Resident Evil. It's a very lone, solitary experience. It's a very slow moving, just tense, atmospheric game where 90% of that game is spent in empty rooms by yourself. There's not even anything to fight or avoid or anything going on, but
picking up the items, using them to solve puzzles, going around this house,
and
closing doors behind
you. But just the tense, the not knowing what's going to happen next, and that's why I feel so bad, people, because after I started tweeting about this, a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna maybe play it through my second time or whatever in VR." No. Just no, forget it. That's done. You've ruined it. It's destroyed. It's gone.
So I played about an hour and a half on the PC, not in VR.
Okay.
Do you think that there's hope for me?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So an hour and a half in, I'm just kind of guessing around where you are. You're still in some of that good stuff. You're still in that good stuff. You're actually, I think the game is about to get a lot better for you. So The other thing that I will say is my first couple times playing it, I got sick. In about a half an hour.
And that was definitely the word out of E3. I think that was part of why everyone was looking at this game really sideways, going RE7 is going to come out.
We have to get used to that movement, right?
Well,
they changed. They added that control scheme. I think, in response to
20-30 degree thing.
So one of the, part of the reason I'm so excited about the game, besides just enjoying it for what it is I'm so excited about it for what it's shown me, and I think proven kind of to everybody about what's possible in VR, which is two things specifically. I thought first-person games in VR would either make you sick or you would have to do that teleporting around thing in order to navigate a game. And that teleporting around is fine for certain games, but for something like Resident Evil or something that's supposed to be scary or where you're supposed to be grounded, it's just not going to work. But what they came up with that, and I think some other games have used it as well, but basically, what we're talking about is you can turn it off so you can have smooth movement like a normal first-person game. When you look left and look right, there's just, you gradually look left and right. But by default, it toggles you 30 degrees. So you push right, it just goes. It's like a second hand on a clock or something. It just pops you there, and that is also was also a little weird and off-putting, to be honest.
I usually don't
first.
like that in games. Like,
it just
I
it
didn't like
took
it.
me out of it.
Mechanical.
Yeah. It was just like, why would I do this? This is artificial. And I turned it off, and I was like, oh, okay, that's why. Because I immediately felt sick with that off. With it on, I still did get sick the first 2 times about a half an hour in, and I thought, well, maybe this is just what I'm going to have to live with. I'm going to have to play in half-hour chunks and then lie on the couch for like 2 hours afterwards feeling sick. But I mean, anecdotally, maybe it's just for me. I think VR legs are a very real thing. I ended up playing then for like 3 hours and just had to stop. I didn't want to stop, and then played like 5 or 6 hour session in one go, not minding it at all. Which is the other thing that it proved to me is you can have a full long game experience in VR. Like VR doesn't have to be little mini games and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it doesn't
that's
have to
exciting.
be something, where you take off the headset every 15 minutes and stuff like that. A lot of those games right now, the way that they are, you want to take the headset off after 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Because it's a very intense, very focused, 10 or 15 minutes.
Or it's just a really short thing. You're like,
Or
okay, I'm
that's
good.
what-
Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's like a Mario Party game or something. It's like, okay, that's enough of that. What else you got? But I don't want to like take over the whole podcast and make it a Resident Evil 7 thing because I could. I definitely could talk about the moments that I had in that game that in being in VR that I think I never experienced before in any kind of game. I hope you do. I hope you do try it. Pick it up from where you're at is fine, but try it again.
I'll probably
in
start
VR.
over because the PC doesn't have VR.
That's right.
I assume it will get it at some point. That's probably
Hopefully.
I would hope it would be a time thing.
Yeah, I'm curious.
And so now I'm not sure what to do because like honestly, like my experience with PlayStation VR has been so negative,
Right.
That the idea of putting that thing back on
right.
is not exactly pleasant.
Sure.
So I feel like I'm kind of waiting. Like I've heard some talk that there may be firmware coming down the pipe that is maybe going to fix the stuff that I saw back at launch finally.
Right. In terms of like jittery.
In terms of it just losing like
movement.
tracking, like or just
Yeah.
like suddenly now I'm facing 180. Like I almost punched through a window playing Job Simulator because where it thought center was had moved so much
Oh,
over the
God.
course of one
Okay.
play
Wow.
session.
Yeah, that's bad.
And so it like that and the first time I ever got sick was playing. We streamed it. I was playing Batman, and the whole world started just doing this, and like, okay, that's not supposed to happen. Like, it just the
That's gonna get you
quality of
sick
the tracking
immediately.
compared to Vive and the Oculus Rift and stuff was so off that
That's
like
bad.
I it's been hard to keep tabs on what is happening on PlayStation VR because our experience or my experience and Brad's for a large part as well
Right.
was just so negative in so many different locations.
Yeah, that sucks. That
Yeah.
stuff will instantly like do it in. So
Yeah.
I guess I was lucky. I didn't have any of that stuff, but you're doing a lot in that game of looking around corners into
Right.
rooms
Yeah.
because you're like I'm not fucking going in here unless okay it looks okay. But that is also that kind of one-to-one. The game never tells you to do that. There's never a specific point in the game where it's like, oh, obviously it wants me to peek around a corner here. You just naturally do that because if you were in like a scary house, that's what you would do. And that is part of what I really love about that game when it lines up with what you would naturally do anyway. It doesn't feel artificial. You just really feel like you're in it. Man, yeah, I should shut up now. I'll just say the DLC 1 had a kind of a cool little. They're doing weird different spins on it. It had a kind of like a survival game. It was very hard and brutal remixed version of it. It's the kind of thing that used to be included for free in a Resident Evil game, and it's like, okay, that's. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's fun. So if you played it and you're now looking for DLC, try DLC 1. DLC 2 is but they're doing more. There's more coming, so I'm excited to see that stuff. And yeah, basically I'm just like, to anyone I can find, if you own a PlayStation VR, especially, and you don't own this game, it's like, why did you buy PlayStation VR? This to me is this game should be packed in. I've told people at Capcom and Sony, pack this game into that hardware because this is your proof of concept of of VR in general.
Well, I wonder, maybe they will eventually, but it seems like they just kind of got caught flat-footed with demand.
Well, no,
especially in
right,
Japan, right?
It's impossible to
Yeah.
find them in Japan.
Yeah.
So
And they're not even trying, I don't think.
Yeah.
I will say it's we can looking at our sales numbers for Res Infinite, I can tell by territory because we get them separately for Europe and America and Asia and Japan. I can tell who gets a shipment just by looking at the numbers because they go
spike
up by
every time.
by a percentage, and it's like, okay, so nobody knows yet exactly where demand is because it's just not been met. So is it almost there and it's just right above it, or is it actually twice the amount of people want it? I don't know. I can say in Japan, people are like really lining up every time.
Lining up just for
rumors.
a chance to buy it.
Right, yeah,
Lining up
to
for
get
like
the
a raffle
ticket, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
right.
going for crazy prices. They're still going over retail in eBay in America. That's my metric for how easy they are to buy.
Right.
Is like how much over retail are they going for on eBay? And I think they're still pretty scarce in Europe, but they're definitely easier to find here than they are in Japan. Japan, I think, though, also was kind of VR starved, where you could get a Vive and you could get an Oculus there, but it was a lot harder to get that. Whereas the people who were super, day one, have to have anything VR in America, at least by the time PSVR had come out, it already, probably had one or the other or both of those other ones. But
very few people in Japan have gaming PCs anyway.
Right.
Too,
That's-
right?
and
So
that's
like
true,
your
too.
in is just much easier through a PS4.
Right.
Yeah.
Or to go to VR Park Tokyo, right?
Right. Or do it in public. Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Has that been well received over there in like kind of public VR?
I haven't been to one, but I mean, there's a lot of those places, and they seem really popular.
They are,
Yeah.
In China big time, but also in Japan. I was talking with the HTC folks, and that's a big like interest of theirs. Like they're very much into, especially with the room scale stuff.
Right. Yeah.
They want to be doing something that's different and weird, and it's actually kind of like a couples thing to a large degree. People are like going out. It's like a movie thing almost. I mean, you could see that a lot of the arcade games, especially now, left over in Japan. There was even I saw like an onsen last weekend. There was a House of the Dead. I'd never seen this before. Maybe you guys would have heard of this one, but there was like a House of the Dead for lovers kind of variation. No, is it striking any?
No.
It's like
That's-
better to
Every
love.
house that is for lovers, as far as I'm concerned.
It was like subtitled. It was in Japanese, but like a loose translation is like better to love than be loved or something like that. And
Not ringing a bell.
anyway,
Your
I'll
fever dream.
look it up. No, it's true.
You know what I've also seen is like gyms like will have like the bikes with like VR, like so you could be like biking through like some fantasy land or something while you're working out, like that sort of thing, getting advertised in Japan too.
Yeah. The Verzoom bike and headset stuff, they sell that stuff over here. It's like, I'm gonna be a unicorn
idea.
and ride a bike. Like it's just a bunch of weird stuff like that. Steve, you been messing around with anything?
Well, Resident Evil 7. No. I will say one quick thing. There was a night that I didn't play it in VR because I knew I'd be too scared.
That is a very real
first
thing.
thing that I've
Apologizing?
ever done, like for a game where I'm like, I think it's too scary to play tonight, and so I decided not to play it. So
That's
you
a
know,
very
that's on
real
them.
thing.
Yeah.
I had a lot of people when I tweeted about it saying that same thing. Actually, when I had that VR night, like 2 of the 5 people got to
ripped off the
literally
headset.
the first door in the game.
Right.
Literally the first door. This is where you stopped.
That's
too,
where I
the first
stopped
time
originally,
playing.
yeah.
And we're just like, no, sorry.
I'm
like,
done.
Yep. Can't, not gonna go in.
I'll have to give it a go because I am usually
Please
not
do.
scared by
Yeah.
games.
Yeah. Me neither.
Like any
Same.
kind of jump scare stuff. It's just like, all right, well, whatever.
No.
So this the way I would describe it is, so you played PT. Did that scare you at all?
Not really.
Okay. Well, then you're never you're
You'll
hopeless. No,
won't be
but
scared.
PT got me like 2 times scared in a way that I was like, wow, I'm not usually scared by games at all. And I felt that way for hours on end on Resident Evil, like just hours straight. So anyway.
I scared myself in other ways. I was playing a lot of unreleased prototypes
Yeah,
leading up
okay.
to,
Oh, nice.
to our launch stream. So yeah,
So
yesterday,
little Drax night out.
yeah,
then.
little Drax night
Yeah.
out, with my Reebok pumps running around. So we were setting up for our live stream yesterday. And it was basically playing through all these things to make sure they worked, how they demo, like Bioforce Ape, and all these like really bad games.
So I've been seeing, I think it's leading up to this thing, people talking or joking about Bioforce Ape. So what's the deal?
So it was an unreleased SETA game for the NES and Famicom, where you're this like mutated ape and you're just flying around the screen. It moves really, really fast. And it's almost like a tech demo for how fast you can move on the NES and Famicom. But the moves are like breakdancing suplexes and things like that. He'll
now
like do
I'm
this
starting
like
to get
backspin.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
And then there's a weird story, like the backstory behind it being like it was shown in a magazine, and then someone like made a fake version of it to try to like, was it actually to try to scam people, or was it just as a goof?
I think it was like a goof, and I was like, we can sell this ROM, and then the actual ROM was found,
and turned out to be way crazier.
Yeah, and
than
it's
the
actually
fake.
crazier than
you're
the fake.
kidding.
Yeah,
So way after the fact, somebody made something to try to
to try to match up with the screenshots. And then there was like Frank actually did a lot of digging into Bioforce Ape to where he tried to actually replicate every screenshot that was in those previews, and he's like, I can't get it to do this weird like ball flip thing, and it's like with like hours on end trying to capture this one moment that was in the screenshot.
Just got to disassemble the whole game.
Yeah,
and see if
pretty
it's
much.
in there.
Yeah,
and this game didn't come out in Japan either, right?
No, it didn't come out anywhere. And so the like bosses are other like basically mutated animals, and nothing has names, just the name of the game. So we call it like Bioforce B and like Bioforce like cow or whatever.
Right.
They just kind of come in, but it's really wacky. I think Frank played through basically everything that's available on the stream.
How done is the game exactly?
I mean, the first
roughly.
couple levels, right?
Okay,
Would it be released? Like, it would have been interesting, but it was so late. Like, that's actually the funny thing about a lot of the prototypes we play. It's like 91, 92. This is, Super Nintendo's already out, right? Is there any reason anybody's going to buy?
Yeah, they're just like looking at the installed base. I feel like that was, I mean, there are so many Atari 2600 prototypes out there, and a lot of them the same deal of just like they're making these games, and then like, oh, the market's just not there anymore.
The window closed,
So,
basically,
Yeah. Well, the other thing is like Nintendo's licensing restrictions, where you're only allowed to release a couple games a year, right? And so they would actually produce a ton of games. When some people would produce a ton of games, and then they would say, well, here are the 5 that we're going to do this year, right? And so it's like California Raisins got cut, and
surprised more people didn't just do like a Ultra, Konami Ultra thing, like
just
make a second company,
Acclaim and LJN,
right?
And all that stuff,
I mean, I think that there was kind of like a wink and a nod type of thing with that.
I think you had to be like golf buddies with what's his face, the president of NOA or whatever.
Oh, it would Howard Lincoln, So that's. We were doing a lot of that, and then I didn't have a whole lot of free time to play other games, but I have been playing Fire Emblem Heroes still.
Nice.
And because now I'm at that level to where your stamina only lasts a couple minutes at the most, right? And so I'm just like, I got a bunch of people level 40, and they're just gonna, now I'm just waiting for, I guess, new content.
Are you still playing, John?
Same thing. Like, I'm at a point now where I can only play for very short periods, so it's not that fun. They need to fix that, like ASAP. That's like a huge flaw with the game, the stamina system. Because like normally those games you get, I think we talked about this on our podcast, but like you get a rank where you level up and then your stamina goes up as well, and therefore when you're deep in the game you can play longer than 5 minutes at a time. They're not they haven't done that yet.
No.
Or you have to pay.
Or you have to pay. Yeah.
I mean,
it's the unspoken like of course you would never do that.
I mean, they actually give you a lot of items to do that.
Yeah.
They're pretty liberal about that, but it's just like, at that point, like also I don't feel like I'm progressing. Like the level thing also is a way of making you feel like you're accomplishing something. So I'm growing, I'm getting stronger in this game.
I'm doing the hardest level, it's like and it's like barely moving. I was like, this is
like, so is it just like also just kind of straight up out of content where you're at?
Pretty much.
Just grind on the same levels over and over?
Yeah.
They're adding new stuff. They just added new levels like yesterday. Okay. Like they basically are like, they have like little events here and there, and then they add the paralogs, which are like the side stories, and they've done 2 of those so far. So like they're trickling it out. I wouldn't say it's bad in that sense. Like it's just that, there's no kind of like end game play because you run out of time so quickly.
And the rewards are just like, oh, here's a 3-star person. Like that, I would never level that person up anyway, right? So it's going to sit in my inventory. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was great to go back to kind of the old stuff and just see how goofy a lot of this old stuff was. So I'm kind of
and then also just like digging out like the M2 and some of that stuff too.
That's right.
Right?
We did. Dragged out like unreleased game systems. Right. So we played the racing game and the shooter game with Jared Petty and Brian Altano on the M2. And then
what is the M2?
The M2 is the 3DO follow-up.
Oh,
so the second, the 32-bit 3DO that they were going. They showed at the E3 that also had the Saturn and the PlayStation.
Yeah.
And it has an MPEG decoder in it, so the full motion video looks really good. I think this was like, oh, all these people want to do FMV for 3DO games. We might as well build that in.
Right.
Like plumbers don't wear ties too. Is
super
way
nice
better.
yeah.
So,
but then they kind of just seemed to not understand that the polygonal style that was going to take off, or didn't anticipate that. So
it didn't have the horsepower, and I think they knew it. So that hardware was actually retasked for like kiosks in auto dealerships, and there's like a vending machine that uses it.
Right.
So
was it Panasonic the one existing or whatever you have?
Yeah, Panasonic was pretty much the only hardware we've ever seen.
So how does one come across an M2 exactly? Can we talk about this? Is this
sure? Maybe
you know
a little
guy
bit.
who knows a guy.
I know a guy. Well,
like some of them, the ones that would come into auto dealerships, at some point those auto dealerships are going to get rid of them, and who knows what happens after
exactly.
that point.
And the hardware is the same. It just looks way boxier.
Oh, it is.
The console ones are the ones that were probably given out to developers for, because
right.
there's like two that look the same, but one's a development kit and the other's like sort of a quote unquote retail,
like a production model.
Yeah, and so those are out very sparingly, but we got one, and
Yahoo
it's
auction kind of action kind of thing?
Most of them actually came from Europe.
Really?
For some reason. Yeah, I'm not sure what the Europe and the U.S. I didn't see anything from.
I didn't realize it had got that far. I mean, I knew there was existing hardware, but I didn't realize it had gotten that far along that they had sent out kind of dev kits.
Well,
to
they were trying. I mean, that was the whole 3DO
Yeah.
thing, right? Was just get as many people to develop for this sort of universal platform,
right?
And they realized, it didn't really happen with the first 3DO, but they have given it a shot. And then, at that E3, it was so obvious. I mean, the Saturn was pretty rough, when it debuted, and because the PlayStation was light years ahead of everybody at that point.
Yeah,
and looked that way, right?
Yeah,
and then it was like PlayStation Saturn, and then like 3DO was like, hey, check out this racing game. And
well, I tell the story every time about like I want to say it was like E3. It had to have been 94, I guess. Or maybe it was 95, but it was where there was just Saturn was very heavy, and then there was a controller manufacturer that had one PlayStation, and that was the only PlayStation that was kind of widely accessible on the floor.
Like Kensha Hall or something?
Yeah, practically, but it was off to the side, and they just had Toshinden.
That was like summer. I think that was summer CES '94.
Okay, maybe it was.
Yeah, that was like the last CES before E3. I remember that. I was there.
And I remember just like standing there, like me, Ryan McDonald, like everybody, just like, we are going to play Toshinden because holy shit, look at this game.
Yeah.
And then you just look at the Saturn stuff and just go, pfft.
Yeah.
I remember the first Japanese PlayStation commercial I saw was just hardware, or it was some live action thing or something, and then right at the end, before the PlayStation, it was just like 2 seconds of Toshinden, and it was just like, wait, what the hell? What the hell? You like buried the lead. Like, what was that game? That like looked, of course, like time proved Virtua Fighter a way better game, but at the time it was just like, what
we were just happy to have
hell?
the pretty. It was
texture maps. It was like, what's going on? That looks crazy.
I paid $900 for my first PlayStation with Ridge Racer imported from Japan.
Ridge Racer
because
was
it was
amazing.
so hard to get. Like, I remember NCS was like, we're gonna have to murder people to get a PlayStation.
Right.
So this builds in the contract killer.
I had access to one because at one point Sony was sending Japanese units out to like mainstream press. So a friend of mine got one that way, and just I got to sit down and play a ton of Ridge Racer,
right?
And just be like, fucking man,
Ridge Racer 2 as well. It was like, what the hell is this like?
Evolution. Yeah.
And because it came out so much earlier in Japan, right? It came out in December. I think, the year before.
Right. It was a year. Yeah.
It came out here, so.
Yeah, that thing.
But Trip Hawkins, misread the market completely, right, with the M2 stuff and like 3DO as well. But I think it's funny. Just this week, I saw him. He was quoted in Matt Leone's story about the Switch, basically saying like that he thinks Nintendo's going to fail and they should be doing stuff for other hardware. It's like basically his tune has not changed. He's very consistent, like over the last like 20 years about like
sooner or later he's going to be right.
He's somewhere writing an angry letter to an editor-in-chief about Portal Runner still. Like he's still holding that grudge, I'm sure, on top of everything else. So yeah, we'll see. But that was a good that Polygon feature, a bunch of quotes from people just like kind of their position on the Switch, whether they're developing for it or not and stuff. I thought that was a good piece.
I didn't see that. Wait, so what is Trip Hawkins doing these days?
It didn't actually list. So he went on to do Digital Chocolate, which was a mobile company.
And raised like 10 rounds of funding. Some insane number.
And then that thing is completely gone.
I believe so,
I don't know what was after that for him.
Right.
But you'll like it because this story, I mean, it's got a bunch of random well, I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean like random developers from different companies. But at the end, it's got like Bernie Stolar, it's got Trip Hawkins, it's got Tom Kalinske.
Tom Kalinske,
who's like, you know, admits that he still like dislikes Nintendo. Like, it's pretty interesting. So the end is really good.
Yeah, that stuff's pretty good. John, you been playing anything other than Fire Emblem?
Not well. I've been playing games that we've been working on, so not a whole lot. I did want to just talk in general about like how many awesome Japanese games there are lately. Like Japan's back, it feels like, or something. Like I got, you know, Yakuza 0, got that, played for a couple hours. It's great. I wish I had more time for it. Neo is amazing. Haven't really had much time to put into that yet because I was playing Yakuza 0.
Yeah.
Nier, which we worked on, just came out in Japan, which is awesome. Really good game.
Gravity Days.
Gravity Rush 2 came out. And then, you know, next week is Zelda. And it's like, what it's basically been is like, what can I squeeze in until Zelda? Because as soon as Zelda hits, that's it. I'm not playing anything else until I'm done with Zelda.
Yeah.
So I've only played like an hour here and there of all these games. But I think the most recent one is Nier because, you know, we worked on it while it was in development. So even though we've seen it all, we've never really seen it all put together.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
So seeing the finished product and kind of sweating through it and like, did that work out the way we hoped it would? And like everything.
Did the timing on this work or did this? Yeah.
For the most part, you know, it seems like it turned out okay. People are really happy with it. I think it's a great game. It's an amazing, you know, we worked on the first Nier, what was it, like 6 years ago, whatever.
Yeah.
And, we didn't know it was going to turn out to be as beloved as it was. I mean, it's a really interesting
the people
game.
that love that game love that game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't a, you know, very competent like game. Like the story was really impressive and how it all came together was interesting. But the game itself, you know, the developer probably wasn't so hot, let's say, and so it had problems in that area. But for them to team up with Platinum now and to see them get that part of the game right finally, it's been really awesome.
I like the demo a lot. We don't have it in house yet. I know other places do, but we should have it pretty soon here. It's very close to buying the Japanese version multiple times because I already have the account. There's already funds in the account.
It's got
I'm buying all these quality hamster products. And knowing that it had full English, I was just like, what am I doing? Like and then it came to the realization, like I'm thinking this as I'm holding a Switch and playing Zelda. Go like, I've got plenty of shit to do right now.
Right.
Maybe I can wait for Nier to come out and try to.
I actually took next week off when I get back from this because like I just need to play Zelda. Like it's one of those, you know, with all these games, you play it for a little bit and then if you get tied up with something else, it's really hard to come back to.
Definitely.
I'm not letting that happen with Zelda. Like I need to finish Zelda or get far enough in that it's like too late to turn back. You know.
Zelda's a really weird one. I'm really kind of curious to see the deeper parts of that game. To just kind of see what it is they've made. I feel like I was the one kind of beating the drum maybe a little, it felt like right on time when Twilight Princess came out going like, they needed to change some shit up.
Yeah.
And then Skyward Sword, I think, made some not so great changes to things.
Yep.
And, you know, they've done bits and pieces, the handheld games like Link Between Worlds, I think is really awesome.
It's great,
and all that. And this game... Like I'm, you know, I have not played a ton of it, and even if I had, I couldn't talk about the deeper parts of the game now. But like I'm having a hard time seeing the Zelda in it because they have done so many different things.
They changed it so much.
Yeah, it is so dramatically different, just in terms of the style of game. Like the combat is very similar. Like it's lock on, hop around, backflip, like that sort of stuff is there. But then it's like, okay, you know, well-timed shield bash for knockback and then go in and do a flurry. It's all this crafting of recipes to like, okay, well, I need to get to this shrine. It's up on top of this mountain and I'll die if I go up there because it's so fucking cold. So I need to find some chili peppers and do this and make this so that I can have 3 minutes of cold resistance and then climb up here and do this. And then like limited stamina. So it's like, okay, I can only climb so high because my stamina is such. And everything you do takes stamina. Gliding on a paraglider, every single bit that you do drains that. So it's like the constant management of what am I capable of at this moment. And it's a lot of really fascinating things that they've built that don't necessarily add up to the Legend of Zelda to me. Like you see, you know, obviously like the art style, the story, the characters, like as you get more and more into that stuff, you see it go like, okay, yeah, this is
right
what you think it is. But yeah, they've done so much work around the edges to it. It's like a really fascinating thing. I just wonder, like, as someone who said they need to change Zelda up and was promptly fucking hated for whatever by people who said no, Zelda's fine.
Yeah.
Like this is finally them making the game
Right.
that is dramatically different.
Right.
I might even say too far for what I was thinking back then. But
were you a fan of the old, like the first Zelda, like the original?
Totally.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
so do you? Because my impression, I mean, yes, they're mixing things up, but the pitch so far has been like, or the way I've understood the pitch is like bringing Zelda back to like its roots and
in terms
people,
of freedom.
Yeah,
in terms of
well,
freedom,
so,
yes.
like
Well,
not
exploration.
hand-holding
Yeah, there's
as much.
it does
Zelda
not
one
have
does.
that.
Well, Zelda
Yeah.
one doesn't handhold you at all. though.
Well,
I mean,
exactly.
right.
That's
It came with that map, man.
Well, yeah, the corners were
Yeah.
you had to
Yeah.
fill them in yourselves. No, but I mean, even so, like it didn't tell you what you had to do or why. It didn't even necessarily
Right.
tell you go to dungeons. You know, you had to kind of figure that out yourself. But
Yep.
like the thing that I'm wondering, I'm hesitant to even talk about Zelda. I don't want to know anything about it until I play it. But
Yeah.
we're on a podcast. We should talk about it a little bit. Like, is do you feel that the feeling that sort of like being lost in a world? Never mind that there's recipes and this, that, and the other
Yeah,
thing. But
yeah.
like, do you kind of feel the sort of Zelda essence as you play? Does it feel that to you, or is that
I think-
or are you distracted by all these other things?
I think I ended up feeling like slightly distracted, but also what you're saying about like it evoking the first game,
Yeah.
I think is there.
yeah.
In
good to
terms,
hear.
but in some really strange ways. Like it's, they've got a tower climbing mechanic in that game. Like a lot of other open world games. But when you get up there, it'll fill in a part of your map, but it does not put any content on that map. Like the map, the aspect of the game of like what is here, what was there is you putting icons on the map yourself. It is you zooming in from a high vantage point and going, that looks interesting. Let's go over there.
So it never fills
I'm going to mark it on the
in?
map. It'll if you unlock a fast travel point, that gets filled in.
Huh. Okay.
But you have the ability to mark the map. And
In multiple places, or just like the next place that you?
over, like you can plop down all kinds of stuff on that map.
Oh,
that's kinda awesome.
Interesting.
So it's almost
yeah.
like that Persona Q
Or Etrian Odyssey.
the Etrian Odyssey
Yeah.
stuff, where you kind of feel like you're
I like that a
making
lot.
your own map
I do
along the
too.
way.
I feel like that's
or-
like kind of the
into it.
spirit of old Zelda.
yeah.
Right?
So like that's okay. Yes, you have framed that for me in a way that now makes sense. Like thinking about it in terms of how the original Zelda felt. Yeah, maybe that's a more
Interesting.
appropriate way to think about it.
It is like systems heavy, which I think you're not
Totally.
used to thinking of Zelda like
Right.
having so many systems like the hot and cold, the
Yeah.
hungry or not, the
And it's a lot of
stamina,
icons.
whatever.
It's literally like here's
Yeah.
a sound meter, here's this meter, like stuff plopping on the UI. You're like, oh, weird.
that's right.
But the lack of just any like, I guess you do have like the little pad or something, but so Navi was a great idea at first, but it just went way off the rails, and I was definitely one of those people that I never played more than I think like 4 or 5 hours into Skyward Sword, because that was just like the peak of it, and it would been getting.
So you basically got to 2/3 of the way through the tutorial then.
No,
if you played
exactly.
4 or 5 hours. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Like barely got out of the first town.
Yeah.
And it was just everywhere you walked. Oh, that's a barrel. You can pick up barrels and roll barrels, and it's like, okay, just let me touch the barrel. I'll figure all that
Yeah.
stuff out. So that part, just hearing that part like confirmed, is what is. Just even having that gone has me super excited, because I've not hated the last few games, but that part of it has really driven me crazy.
Yeah, this game really feels more like they're just going to throw you out there and you'll figure
That's
it out.
exactly what that sounds.
I will say, like,
Great.
and I'm like kind of our resident sort of Skyward Sword defender. I did finish it, and like, and I get the complaints, and I understand there are certain parts of it that are frustrating and annoying, whatever. But like, there are also parts of that game that I would say are like magical. Like they really nailed they're just amazingly pulled off, and like, and I feel like those times when the game does succeed is when it kind of gives you a little more freedom, or when you're like exploring a dungeon or something, when you're not feeling constrained by the world, because the world in that game is very tiny. It's the same director, Fujibayashi-san. He's the guy who's doing this game. Like I feel like opening up the world in Breath of the Wild to more moments like that theoretically should lead to a really, really good Zelda game.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
I think like their pitch, like it was fun seeing it at E3, and then again they had that Switch event in New York, and I went out there for that, and seeing the same pitch again, where like they hand me the controller and they go, "Hey, you see that mountain?
You can go there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're going on a decade of developers saying that can't be the first words out of your mouth with this game. Like,
Right.
don't do that to me. Yeah, it's a really fascinating thing. It feels very, very different than what's come before it, for sure. And that's me again being afraid to play too much into it, because I'm on the Office Switch and I'm not confident in how save transfers will work. So I know I'm gonna have to start over when my own Switch shows up this week.
Right.
So I'm just like kind of playing it in fits and starts because I know I need to play some of it to like have a conversation about it. But I'm like,
right.
I'm gonna run over here and do this just because I want to see this thing, and then I'll stop. So it did kind of drag me in a little bit here and there.
Have you played a lot? I'm curious, like how you're playing it. Are you enjoying playing it handheld? Are you playing it on your TV? Have you been going back and forth?
I had primarily been playing it handheld. Because I only had 2 HDMI ports to my TV. And actually, the first weekend we had the Switch, I didn't feel like taking the dock home.
Okay.
So I just grabbed the power plug and the Switch and said, let's try it handheld. And I played a lot that way. I think it feels good.
I was curious playing, because everybody who I talked to about it who's played it a bunch has been mostly playing it on the TV. So I'm curious to talk to you about it because I'm going to be playing it primarily in that handheld mode, definitely in the next week. Like, playing it for over an hour or whatever, do your arms get tired at all?
No, it's been fine. It's not that heavy of a device.
Right.
It's substantial, but it's
Do you rest it on anything like your leg or?
I've probably put my elbows on a desk or something like that and played like that here and there too. But,
right.
But yeah, I mean, you could hold it above you in bed for a good chunk of time.
Right.
I will say the power cable that comes with it is not necessarily long enough for you to plug in bed and USB-C it up to the tablet itself.
It's also at the bottom, right?
Right, it's at the bottom. So if you're kickstanding, you probably can't charge at the same time.
Right. Weird choice.
Yeah, that was one of the first things that we saw. It's like, wait, so if I want to charge and play it in tabletop mode,
I guess because when you dock it, that's what it's
it's
using.
Also, I feel like the kickstand is pretty bad in terms of, but mostly like it doesn't feel great, but they made it so if it snaps off, it reattaches. It's kind of meant to break away.
Oh, interesting. Huh.
But
kids are gonna break.
Well, yeah. So they tried to make it resilient in that sense. But the angle at which it stands up feels useless to me. Like they made that use case of like play it on a plane, but it's still mostly standing up straight. It's leaned back just a little bit.
Right.
So I'm tall on a plane. I would look down like this, and this is not a good angle to see the screen.
Right.
So like kids on a plane to be perfect.
Yep.
But people on or people on a close desk at that height, I think would have trouble with the kickstand.
That's a risk for first class. Right.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Then you sit
further away.
Back,
yeah. I've got my champagne.
No problem.
What's that? What is that mode called? I can't keep track of the mode. So it's handheld mode when you're holding like this. What's the mode called where it's like sitting?
I think it's just tabletop.
Okay,
mode,
tabletop.
I think is what they're calling it.
The one thing I noticed about tabletop mode, at least with Zelda, that because I was like, okay, I probably might play it this way sometimes, and I quickly discovered I don't think I will, because with Zelda at least, even the UI elements, definitely the text, were so small, even with it very close, maybe just like even 2 feet away, that I felt like, you know, with the old Game Boy Micro, I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And then you play an RPG and you're like, shit.
Okay, I'm going to hold this up here.
Yeah,
That's for Drew's super eyes.
Yeah,
Drew's been, Drew got his LASIK and now he's playing
and
Game Boy Micro all the time.
I do actually play it in bed about, like,
you have to like
just Final Fantasy, right?
Read it one letter at a time. Like it's like an eye test. You're just like
like I wonder if tabletop mode is just going to be for kids,
right?
That have the eyes that like this is probably going to be the year where I finally get glasses. Or
certain games maybe it'll work better that are like no text at all. I don't know, maybe Splatoon or something like that. But definitely with Zelda, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to be playing it mostly.
There's a lot to read in that game,
right?
So
that's why I was asking. I mean, not specifically because of the UI, but I feel like if there's any one game that I almost don't want the world to be contained to a small screen, it's Zelda. So like I feel like even though I'm really happy for the portable aspect of it, I almost feel like I want to play it on a TV. Just because, like, not just to be able to read what's going on, but just because, like, that world, like, I almost feel like it's too small to contain it. You know?
I would. I think I would too. Yeah.
I think part of the reason I was primarily playing handheld was A, I didn't bring the dock home, but B, I don't think I like the way the Joy-Con grip feels, like sliding those controllers into it.
Right. I agree.
It's very narrow, having the analog sticks right above and below the D-pad and buttons as opposed to kind of shifted out. Doesn't feel great.
Right, it's fine when it's like
fine when it's separated.
When it's that close together, it's pretty weird.
Yeah, so they sent us a Pro controller on Friday. So after about a week with the system, we got a Pro controller in, and I picked the thing up and went, oh, okay, problem solved.
It feels
this
really
is the
good.
thing.
Yeah, we messed with it a little bit before the show, and like now I'm glad I pre-ordered one just in case, because like Mark was saying earlier beforehand, we both bought one on Wii U, and then I think almost never used it.
I used it for Bayonetta. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I don't even think I used it actually in the whole life of the system, and so because the thing itself, the gamepad was like it was bulky, but it was good enough. Like,
Right.
but like,
Yeah.
but in this case, I feel like I'm really glad I got it now because it's not super comfortable to play with those little controllers. So like I want the real deal,
Yeah.
and the buttons feel good, and everything's in the right place now. It's not in the weird place like on the Wii U. So.
Right. And I just I've never been a really big like handheld person, so I was kind of always just thinking, well, I'm gonna treat this as a console and go that route with it. But it sounds like I won't be able to do that with 100% of the games as we get into the news.
Oh, you surprised me.
Wait, let's go to our ad first. How about I double surprise
Oh, okay.
you? We'll take a quick break. I always forget. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back with the news. How about that? Then you have time
To prepare.
for the news.
Thank you, Jeff.
We'll be back. Food coming to your door, high quality ingredients.
I like it.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
All right, I will bring it on.
Send it in the mail.
Here it is. For less than $10 per person per meal, Blue Apron will deliver easy-to-follow recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients.
Good. I don't know how to measure,
Exactly.
so that's helpful.
All those measuring cups and sticks and whatever,
I threw them away.
yeah, throw them out.
Who needs it?
They send you the exact right amount from over 150 local farms, ranches, and fisheries across the U.S. right to your door. That's right. Right to your door.
My door?
Your door. Do you want to hear about some of the meals you could get sent to your door right now here in the month of February?
Lay it on me.
All right, it's cashew chicken stir fry with tango mandarins and jasmine rice.
Sounds good.
Udon noodle soup with miso and soft boiled eggs.
I could go for some soup.
All right, roasted pork with apple, walnut, and farro salad.
Don't know what farro is, but sure.
And crispy barramundi.
I think that's a fish.
Yeah, it is.
I think somebody
It's
wrote in and said it
definitely a
was.
fish.
Somebody wrote in and said, "Hey, that's a fish."
I looked it up at one point.
I'm in Australia, and that's a fish.
Yeah, I
think is how that went.
I've seen that T-shirt. I'm in Australia, and that's a fish.
Yeah.
With quinoa and roasted carrot salad. Yeah.
Okay.
Right?
Sure.
You can check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals for free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/bombcast. You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so do not wait. That's blueapron.com/bombcast. Blue Apron, it's a better way to cook. And we are back, and it's time for the news. Look at that. You're just
Perfect.
Like, pow.
Perfect.
Drew on it. Just bam. Well, let's keep with the Switch stuff. As I was saying before the break, not all Switch games will support TV mode. This is a story out of Kotaku. I've seen it going around a handful of places. I believe the game is named Voez, V-O-E-Z, and it's out for the Japanese launch. It is a mobile port of a rhythm game, and it is touch only. No controller support or anything like that. They have a fact up on their site that is like literally like the translation is, question, can I play even in TV mode? Answer, no. This software cannot play in TV mode. Button operation is not available. Touch the touchscreen in mobile mode to play the game.
Wow.
Guess that answers that question.
Yeah, so I think that had been one of the things, as we were talking about, like, before they had even confirmed that it had a touchscreen, which it seemed obviously likely that it would, was like, okay, if I'm going to dock this thing, then how could I play a Mario Maker or something like that without holding it in my hand? Will there be a 2-screen solution to beam it to the dock and get a different thing here? Or,
You're going to need a separate app on your smartphone to make the
right,
Mario.
yeah.
levels.
Oh, God.
And to communicate with your friends.
That's a very Nintendo-like solution. Very DNA-like solution, I guess I should say, in that case. Yeah, so it sounds like Nintendo is kind of freewheeling and allowing people to make games that don't necessarily support every single way you can play a Switch.
Right. When I first heard that news, that was like completely confounding to me. But knowing now that it's the touchscreen required, kind of makes a little more sense. I'd be very curious how that's represented on things like the eShop and things like that.
Right. So I think they have. I wish I had one of them in here, but I think the back of the box actually will have kind of like iconography based around like which modes it supports.
Right.
You know, if you're a developer and you're thinking, how can I drastically limit my audience? Here's one way. Just make it not playable on a
or
TV.
you're a developer thinking, how can I drastically put these phone games onto the Switch?
Yeah, how can I port this as quickly as
nobody's
possible?
asking for.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
but it's on the store. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
It costs you almost nothing to port. I mean,
this reminded me, didn't Nintendo like months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, say that they were interested in unifying, or there was some news about them having their cell phone games also playable on?
I think
there was a rumor.
Yeah, there was
Yeah,
a rumor
there-
about it.
right.
'Cause that was probably tied around the time that people thought that maybe this thing was going to be Android based.
Right.
Right,
and there
that's
was
right.
Some talk like, oh, well, that makes
That's
sense if they're going to like
right.
make all these games with mobile.
So
and,
I wonder
yeah.
if there is a world where there would be first-party games that go this route, where it's like, well, we have Fire Emblem Heroes or whatever. Do we ever put that out on Switch? Or
Well, I mean, the biggest thing is connectivity, right? With Fire Emblem Heroes or anything that's, mobile free to play. So yeah, I mean, this rhythm game
You
is
have your
isolated to
mobile
the
game.
tablet, right?
Yeah,
Like it
yeah.
does. Yeah, I mean, you might download songs. Or
but that'd be
something,
hilarious if you had
Yeah.
to use the online app to get online to play.
Right.
Right, well, you
Yeah.
pair it to your
Using your cell
phone,
phone.
and no.
Does
geez.
Fire Emblem have
Right.
like real time multiplayer or anything like that would definitely like require an internet connection?
The thing that requires the internet connection is definitely the update of the stats that happens after every single battle,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
Like most phone games
yeah,
of that nature.
So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
go and it's like, I lost connection. Your last battle didn't happen according to us.
Oh, great.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was kind of the other part of all this from just using a Switch for a while was that notion of like, oh, the vast majority of the time I'm not going to be connected to the internet if I am treating this like a handheld.
Right.
In its current state, it doesn't. Their day one firmware update will supposedly add the light web browser that will let you theoretically connect to hotel Wi-Fi and
Right.
stuff like that. But out of the box right now, like I can't do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how many people try to use it as like a tablet, right, and not a
we
game
definitely
system.
got some questions from people going like, oh, can I use this as a tablet? Like, do you think it'll get Netflix and YouTube app? And I kind of said like, maybe the YouTube apps have given Nintendo a little more trouble on the security side than they want to deal with. So they have a pretty good reason to not.
It's like most people have like a tablet-like thing.
Have they
in their
said they're
pocket
never
anyway.
doing it? Because to me,
I don't think
no,
they've said
I'm
never.
sure it's
no,
coming.
but
all of
yeah.
that stuff.
Netflix
I'm sure it's
at
just,
least has
Yeah,
got to.
Yeah, the
YouTube
Wii was like a
too.
Netflix thing for a huge percentage of the
I mean, remember when
population.
3DS came out? I forget what was missing, but some pretty significant stuff wasn't even in there. I mean, did it even have Street Pass? I forget what it was, but like something didn't get added to 3DS until like a few months after launch. Like
Yeah.
maybe it was the eShop. The
might
eShop
have
wasn't
been the
there on
eShop,
day
yeah.
one. Like, so I feel like they're kind of in that stage right now with Switch. Maybe it's just
Right.
like, we got to get it out, but there's a lot of stuff still coming that's not done or ready yet.
Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
you have limited resources, right? You want to focus on the gameplay
Yeah.
side, get that
I mean,
right.
Virtual
And it's like,
Console isn't
yeah.
on there either, right? As
yeah,
far
you
as
know
I
what?
know.
Yeah.
But to me, that's like I was surprised that people were surprised that it wasn't going to launch with Virtual Console, because
Right.
it's like you want to sell like not only your games but the third-party games, and there's like a bunch of indie games coming. Like you don't like that's stuff to like keep people happy in the like long droughts that I'm sure are coming, between releases coming up, and like try to drum up excitement around the Virtual Console. Whereas if you put it out while everybody's already talking about Zelda, talking about launch, talking about some of the indie games, and just like flood the eShop, I mean that's a big thing to partners, is to be one of the quote unquote few games that are going to be on the eShop in the first couple weeks and stuff. That's a big selling point.
Yeah,
to
if it's
them.
suddenly
So-
like, oh, we put 30 Super Nintendo games on here too, then
exactly,
that's-
and you got to
yeah.
PR that, and you have
Right.
to like have the oxygen for the media to be able to
Also,
talk
I
about
would
that.
hope that like the not having any kind of emulated stuff there at launch would then translate into them getting this right on the purchase migration front.
Yeah.
Of just like, hey,
That will
if
be
you bought these on the
interesting.
Wii U,
I
you
hope
have them.
so.
If you
We
bought them
can
on
only
3DS,
hope.
yeah,
That
but
will
that's
be interesting.
yeah. Like how do they price that stuff? Because from
Especially
Wii to
now
Wii
that
U,
it's portable,
Right,
right?
yeah.
Like it's 2-in-1. It's like taking it off the 3DS kind of and off of their home system.
Well, we know
if
it's
you buy it
coming,
there,
right? Because
so.
they've already said like they're going to do that thing where like you get a
Right.
classic game every month or whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
maybe they're
they
just
have said
working
it's
that out.
happening, but.
Port over my ambassador games. Got to get those.
Yeah, exactly. So that's yeah. You talk about the ambassador certificate,
Yes.
and with the way the Switch launch, like, well, whatever. They added some more games to launch. They announced some more games.
Yep.
But I definitely like in the weeks prior kind of started having this feeling of like, are we going to get a Switch ambassador certificate and an apology? Like, here's 10 games. Like, thanks for buying one right out of the gate.
Right.
Because the software lineup seems pretty light. But you know, like I said, Snipper Clips is now a launch day game, which is
that was kind of
good.
What happened there?
I almost wonder if that's like pull the ripcord, like
maybe a reaction to the
if that's a reactive
feedback?
move, or if they just it happened to be ready and they're like, oh great, awesome, we weren't sure.
Right.
I know a lot of stuff was really coming down to the wire.
Yeah.
Like the developers have talked about it. Like they were just like, yeah, we're finishing our game like 2 weeks ago or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just that too. It's like, are we going to make it? We don't know.
Maybe
Let's
they
wait
just
till we know
cleared
for
cert
sure.
faster than anyone thought and put it out.
Well, the window to develop was really narrow, right? Relatively speaking, for like a new console launch. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The partners they were talking to a year ago is not, is pretty small.
But honestly, everyone's just going to play Zelda. I mean, they really only need to sell it to people who want to play Zelda for now anyway. That's going to be enough people to make it a significant,
they'll sell through their launch quantities
right?
and they'll be sold out. I don't have any doubts in that, there are enough Nintendo fans to make this launch work. It's that mid-year period, that midpoint between Zelda and Mario, where it's like, okay, well, Splatoon's coming out. That's a big deal, and
Mario Kart.
Mario Kart.
Right.
At some point they'll have to announce Smash Brothers or something like that. That's probably an E3 thing or something. But we'll kind of see how it shapes up. It's been fascinating to watch.
Do you think there will be any games that use book mode?
Oh, like
Oh,
you said,
yeah.
like
Oh,
rotated. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you could.
Good question.
Gauntlet on the links.
Right, yeah.
Remember, you had
Yeah,
to
they're going
turn
to port
it-
Gauntlet from the links.
Exactly.
That was the first
That's
game I
why
was
we
thinking
brought
of,
you.
too.
Deep cuts like Gauntlet on the links.
Playing
Makes
as the
virtual
nerd,
console.
the
Yeah.
nerd class
The
on
ner- yeah,
Gauntlet
yeah,
on
right?
the links. Yeah.
They could do, you could envision all types of like vertical shooters and stuff like that using that mode. You could still hold the controller at the bottom and get you have an analog stick and 4 buttons right there. It's not ideal, but you could do
Treasure,
it.
get on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could play Ikaruga on this thing.
Yeah.
You could play Galaga on this thing. Like that'd be a pretty good form factor. The weight distribution might be a little strange in your hand, but
And then you're stuck with it being a handheld only thing again, right? Unless you got a TV that can like swivel or
Right.
turn, turn
right.
sideways.
well, I've got it hooked up to my candy cab, and I just take it out, rotate the monitor, put it back. It's fine.
Perfect.
It's fine.
We'd
Do you
have
guys-
vertical contra.
Yeah.
Do you guys think we're gonna see, or maybe I should just say, how soon are we gonna see like replacement, like bespoke per game controllers that click on kind of thing, like that? Before it came out, even that somebody on the internet made the fishing controller, or the Pokemon controller, that just snaps on the side that kind of comes with the game. Do you think that we're gonna see something like that?
Considering how much the Joy-Cons are,
Yeah.
I'm curious to see like if any third party can.
Right.
With that,
But
cost
maybe it's
on
not
top of
something
it,
that
right?
has to work separately. Maybe it only works. It's not like it doesn't have its own.
It doesn't
battery
duplicate the
and
functionality. It's just
Wi-Fi
like, here's this
and-
thing that looks like a pistol. Slide it onto your thing.
You know, whatever Sakurai-san is working on, the Smash Brothers Kid Icarus guy, like he's always got some thing like related to his game that like the Kid Icarus had the stand or whatever.
So, yeah, the Switch
They brought out the
stand,
GameCube controller for Wii U just so you could play Smash Brothers. There'll be something.
Yeah,
I would like to see something. It'd be cool. Like,
that thing right there. If
Yeah.
anything's
Yeah.
going to sell
Pokemon.
that, it's going to be a Pokemon something.
Yeah, it's
or other.
Pokemon. Pointing at my Pokemon Go Plus.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
on my wrist for those. listening
Yeah,
to you.
I wonder how that'll go. They did have a tiny steering wheel to snap a Joy-Con into for Mario Kart on the Switch, which
That's
really bummed
even
me out.
tinier
Yeah.
steering
Even
wheel than
tinier
the
than
Wii
the-
one.
yeah.
It looked like a cocktail. I don't
Yeah.
even something you would come in like a Mai Tai or something. It's like this big.
We're just
The
gonna
little
get like
tykes.
Link's crossbow training 2. They're gonna have the
man.
Switch Zapper, and
I want Namco to make like a Negicon and like bring out Ridge Racer.
That
would
That'd
be
be cool. Like
awesome.
you could twist
That
your
would be
Switch.
cool.
yeah,
That's still one of my favorite controllers.
yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if somebody made like a portable dock that you like slide the Switch into that is a battery pack on the back, and then Joy-Con
Yeah.
replacements
Yeah.
on the side.
You could
Like
do that.
some
You
big
Like a slab
Slab,
battery.
yeah.
Put a worm light on it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's magnifier.
Yeah.
Back the
But
worm
you,
light.
I mean, you could have a dock that is like batteries and bigger speakers. You
Yeah.
know, like you dock it, plug in the headphone jack,
Yeah.
and something like that would probably be useful for all these loud ass rooftop parties you're having.
The bigger
Yeah.
battery, that stuff is coming.
Yeah.
I was joking because I felt like with this system, when I buy the system, I always just buy the system,
Mhm.
and I feel like the grandma or whatever that goes into Best Buy or GameStop and gets that big waste of money bundle with you know, like it comes with a carry case and a kickstand, you know, like all this shit that nobody needs. But with the Switch, it was like, well, I think I kind of need a battery. Like, I need to be able to recharge. It's only, you know, a couple hours. We fly international sometimes, so it's like, okay, I need that. Oh, I do need a case for this thing because you know, that screen, you don't want that to get scratched.
Well, Best Buy, I mean, they make money by selling accessories, not the consoles, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
th-
Oh,
for
no,
sure they're going to have all of that that they're going to try to upsell.
I've
you.
already
Just
bought
because-
more accessories for that stupid Switch than like, I mean, I spent
That's what I was
probably,
noticing.
yeah.
I never buy accessories at launch, you know, but for this, it was like, well, I feel like it kind of, at least those two things, I kind of needed them.
Yeah, we got the case in. Let's like the official, like Nintendo sent the case out, and it seems all right. It's got the. I realized there was a piece in it that folded, and I was like, well, I don't understand why this is even in here. You can kind of put game cards in it, but also it'll fold out and kind of serve as a better kickstand in a weird way.
Oh, no kidding.
Where if you fold it over just right, you can kind of stand it up a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
Okay.
Kind of like a triangle
yeah,
style.
yeah,
Okay.
and so that's pretty good. In Japan, it sounds like the thing I want is that iPad smart cover flap.
Yes.
For
Seen
just
that.
the screen.
Yep.
It sounds like that will exist in Japan. It doesn't. I don't know if that's coming over here.
clips onto like the top of the back of the Switch
Yeah.
and then like just sort of hangs over, like kind of like the iPad Mini or the
Yeah.
iPad ones.
And
Yeah, it looks
I,
nice.
I'm curious to know if that will still fit in the dock with that on there because it's a relatively tight fit.
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah.
guess.
So I wonder if
you
you'll just have to like
flip it
flap
over.
it up, dock
Yeah.
it, and then just drop the flap over the side of it, like
Right.
you know,
Hanging
like,
over.
It's
kinda cool.
That might still work.
Here's an idea. What if they sell, instead of for the Joy-Con replacements on the side, what if they just sold like more screens? Your Switch just gets wider and wider. And
Yeah.
you're just-
Like triple screen.
Play Forza.
Yeah,
on
yeah,
it.
exactly. You start playing 3-screen driving games.
Yeah.
All on one thing.
Yeah, in terms of the accessory, like the most obvious one is something to put the Joy-Cons in when you're docked, right? Because like
isn't
the one it comes with
yeah.
is too
Right,
small. One
right.
they just make something wider.
Somebody
Right.
make a better one of those.
Right
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
this is the most obvious
Oh, yeah, the
accessory. This is
battery.
so that when we get on the plane going home, it's not going to die after like 2 hours. Or
Yeah.
whatever.
Does that
This
put out
thing's-
enough
The giant battery.
juice?
Apparently, yeah. I mean, this
Yeah.
thing, you could kill a man with this
Yeah.
thing. It's pretty heavy. So
I mentioned it before the show, but I took the Switch and plugged it into my PC because I wanted to see if it would
Download
do
the
anything.
ROMs?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I replaced it all, put RetroArch on. It's fine. It's easy. No, it's lights up and says it's charging, but it didn't seem like it was actually like putting juice into that thing. It's still like as I was playing Zelda, it felt like, oh, this is maybe not enough juice coming out of this USB port to charge it.
that's going to become a big thing, I think, because like it doesn't. I said this before it came out, and I still feel so now after holding it, but it still doesn't feel portable to me. Like it doesn't feel like a proper handheld. It feels like a big thing that you take with you occasionally because it's convenient.
Yeah.
But I don't see this becoming like a replacement for a 3DS.
It feels like the thing I wanted the Vita to be. Was like just a better, like, you know, dockable out of the gate, unlike Vita
Right.
TV having its weird issues. But that, like, having that experience of like, oh, maybe this is the right way to finally put console games on a handheld. It's not necessarily the PSP. It's not the Vita, but like the Switch maybe finally bridges that gap by just going like, just drop it in the dock and you're there.
Right.
Like, very fast transition from one to the other, so
Right.
you can kind of just pick it up and go.
Versus
and-
like a 3DS or a 2DS though, where like literally you could drop it on the floor and feel like fine about it. I feel like you dropped your Switch, right?
did.
Like and
Yeah,
like
I
you're
was
not now
walking-
you're not sure like if the controllers are
So yeah, so that's I can knock either controller off that thing without pushing the button, which seems like a bad thing. And I need to try it on a Switch that has not been dropped because I looked at it, nothing broke on the Switch. I dropped it, it's fine, it's
Right.
sturdy.
That's good to know.
It didn't fall on the screen, but you know, like a controller, one of the Joy-Cons flew off in a comical fashion about 20 feet. I'm like, well, this had to happen sooner or later, I guess. Like I was holding that and the case and all this stuff coming down to the studio for our Friday show, coming down here, and it just fucking fell off. And I was like, oh shit. Well, good. Drop test. We need to do a drop test anyway.
Yeah.
Like picked it up and it all turned on. It's fine. But yeah, like I can. Nothing seems broken, the mechanism or the latch or anything like
I
that.
bet it's just
but,
like that.
But
'cause
it's so if it's just like that,
it's just like that.
if it's
I
just
bet.
like that, and I should just go grab GameSpots and just go, give me that thing, pop, and see if it does it. But you don't have to apply a lot of force to get that thing off the slide, off the rail, and
I was
that's
a little
concerning.
surprised. Yeah.
That's because that's
Anybody with kids, I mean,
that's
like,
it falling out of your hand while you're holding it because
Right.
because the tablet will drop out of the bottom if anything happens, and it seems like you could if you just shook it like that, it wouldn't be that much less force than the force I have to tap it to knock it off. it's concerning.
Yeah,
Right.
Concerning is a good word.
But I hope my only hope is that not all Switches do that, and I guess I just don't know. We'll find out pretty soon here. If that's even going to be an issue, but I definitely don't feel like I'm manhandling that thing to knock those Joy-Cons off.
I wonder if it's just the mechanism has to be so small by the nature of everything being so small that it's just it can't put up with too much pressure.
And then the slide that you get on the Joy-Con for the strap and the button extenders has an additional latch on
that little lock on the bottom
that locks
thing.
it on. And so that's fine.
That you have to really give it.
That is actually kind of difficult to do. Yeah, but
they should have used whatever the connection was for the main thing for that.
So other news: Nintendo this morning just announced a pile of indie games. I'm sorry, Nindy games.
Is that really what
that is what they are? They've got Nindies.
That's cute. Come on, that makes sense.
TM trademark.
They got Nindies in the eShop.
Sure.
You know. So some of these games have appeared elsewhere, but yeah, it's a pretty good list here. Runner 3 from Choice Provisions.
It's Bit Trip, right?
Yeah, it's the SteamWorld Dig 2, which the reveal trailer for that invokes the word Metroidvania in there. So I'd be kind of curious to see what they're doing. The trailer doesn't have a ton of gameplay in it, but hey, I was just saying recently, like, man, they should make Dig 2. Stop messing around with all these other SteamWorld games, and they are great.
Nice.
Blaster Master Zero from Inti Creates.
Yeah.
That is also on 3DS, and that's out on the 9th.
Surprise. And I
out
think
of
it's
nowhere.
the 3rd in Japan. I think it comes out on
that's
launch
like
day in
day and date.
Japan.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
I feel like every time they have tried to make a new Blaster Master, it has not gone especially well.
That is true, yeah.
The PlayStation version was.
Hopefully this will be the exception. We'll see.
Yeah.
Inti's done good work before.
They do good stuff.
Yeah. Well, they've gone back to the NES style, where it's like the 2D side scrolling,
That's
and
right.
the 3D overhead, and
so.
Very much so. I saw their T-shirts they were wearing. They look like the NES box and stuff like that. They're like fully embracing that era. They're not trying to make it.
It's interesting to see. Like the Switch feels like the right platform for that. I mean, with Ultra Street Fighter 2 and some of that other stuff. Which, if you were ever thinking, will there be a virtual console version of Street Fighter 2? I guess never, because they're going to want to sell you Ultra instead.
Right.
Well, Blaster Master means a lot of things to a lot of people, I think, and well, mostly old people at this point. But I mean, it'd be curious. I'm really curious to see what Japan's take on Blaster Master. I mean, it's always been a Japanese game, but I think it only ever really got big here. Yeah. So how did they feel nostalgic about it? Is it going to be all weird and anime, or is it going to be like, we'll see.
Yeah. I'll be really curious to see how that goes, because it's.
I hope it's good.
Yeah, I hope so too. Because I liked that game, but also if you go back to the original Blaster Master now, you're like, oh, all this top-down stuff is terrible. Yeah, like this is not a great game.
Yeah.
But the vehicle looks so fucking awesome. Like, so that's out March 9th here in the States. Pocket Rumble, which is in early access on Steam. It looks like a bootleg Neo Geo Pocket Color game.
I thought that's what it was.
It's a fighting game. Yeah. It's.
I mean, the
color palette.
The guy with the hat. I mean, you're just like, this is Match of the Millennium on with like
it's like a bootleg Terry Bogard. So they've been selling this. I think it came out this month in early access on Steam.
Who makes it?
It's I don't know that I have the name here.
So it's not like SNK or something.
No. It is another crew.
Okay.
Just making their homage to the Neo Geo
Everybody was
Pocket
very
Color.
quick to say no.
Homage.
Yeah, homage. Yeah. I'm holding out for Ganbare Neo Poke-kun to come over to the Switch in some form. Finally, Yooka-Laylee is making the Switch. Right? No. There you go. Thanks. Flipping Death from Zoink Games. Mr. Shifty from Tiny Build, which that is in open beta on PC, and that's kind of a top-down. You can kind of do a Nightcrawler kind of quick teleport burst thing, and other than that, it kind of looks like maybe a little Hotline Miami in spots, but kind of top-down thing. War Groove from Chucklefish, which I'd heard someone say that just looked like Advance Wars.
I saw that same comment.
So cool. Stardew Valley's coming over. Multiplayer will be first on the Switch for Stardew Valley.
Yeah, that's a surprise.
Shakedown Hawaii from V-Blank. That's the Retro City Rampage developer. That's the spiritual successor to Retro City Rampage.
Brian Provenciano.
Yeah. It's their 16-bit game, whereas Retro City was definitely more 8. Graceful Explosion Machine from Vertex Pop. Tumbleseed from Greg Wolwin from AEIO Woo.
Yeah.
The Threes developers there. Overcooked Special Edition which will include all the DLC that's been put out for Overcooked. The Escapist 2, Goner, where only the O is in lowercase and everything else is uppercase. It's a procedurally generated platformer with roguelike elements from Raw Fury. Kingdom 2 Crowns and Dandara, also both from Raw Fury. So that's the bulk of their announcement. Some known, some unknown. That's a good, healthy, and this is spread throughout. Some of this is summer, some of this is later this year,
right.
Unspecified dates, but
it's a pretty good lineup.
It's a good pile of games to drop all at once. Be like, oh, by the way, the week our system comes out, we're going to tell you, remind you that maybe some games are going to come out someday.
Yeah. What are the 3 of them were HD Rumble kind of called out?
Yeah, they spent some time talking about
Tumbleseed,
HD Rumble a lot,
which
I'm not. It feels like just a buzzing in Zelda. It doesn't. I'm not. The definition of the Rumble is not outside of 1-2 Switch. I've not felt anything that really took great advantage of it, but we'll see. All right, that's about it for our Switch hour and a half. So let's get into the back half of the show here. Peter Moore is leaving EA.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Leaving the industry.
Leaving the industry.
Bummer.
He's going to be the CEO of Liverpool FC.
Congratulations. He's been a huge fan of them since birth.
Right.
I guess where he grew up.
He's going to go run business for a football team.
For a football team.
That's impressive. That guy, he's had a pretty good career.
Yeah,
done
it really seemed
lot
like
more than most people.
It really seemed like for a while that he would maybe be the next CEO of EA, and then Andrew
when
Wilson came in.
left.
Riccatello left. I felt like there was that power vacuum, and you felt like there were a lot of people struggling for that spot. He didn't get it,
right?
So
And
at that point, I was like,
gone.
oh well, he's gone.
Yeah.
He's immediately if he's not going to ascend,
maybe he didn't want
whatever.
Maybe he's biding his time.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Got this,
this
football thing.
I heard a handful of different stories.
Okay.
Tell here about stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he is out of video games and going to soccer, which I mean that dude has meant so much to video games over the years. Like he's been everywhere. Like he was the guy on the call when they killed the Dreamcast in the States. He was the guy giving the announcement. He was he's been all over the place.
Halo 2 was Xbox for a while. Right?
Yeah.
One of the people that really, at least publicly, was like the face of Microsoft turning it around with the 360. When they were firing on all cylinders, like he was very much part of that stuff. I'm just really sad. He was like always like a super quotable, very charismatic guy wherever he was.
Just a good spokesperson for video
industry.
Games.
Yeah,
exactly.
Super passionate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it came from Reebok. It's like, oh, does this guy know anything about video games?
Right.
And then
really
Drax Night Out got canned, and you're like, well, I got to get after this video game thing. And
But he was really good at like walking the line of being like a seeming like genuine person, but also getting his message across, but not in like a shitty like salesperson-y kind of way. Like it came across as more honest, I think, and was still able to like make his point, but especially back when I was in the press, he was always like somebody we could get an interview with him or like good for a quote or anything like that. He's one of the people that made the industry more interesting and
Definitely.
more fun to follow. So I totally get he's always been always talking about soccer and always huge into sports in general, obviously coming from Reebok. So it's great for him, but like selfishly, I'm bummed. I got I gotta be honest.
well, there's oftentimes feel like no one is out forever.
Right.
So,
that's
who knows?
right.
Now he's got a CEO title again.
Yep.
You could see maybe he turns it or does some stuff there and maybe goes like, hey, well now I'm going to parlay this back into CEO role somewhere in the video game industry and get back in.
Right.
That's
so EA needs a new chief competition
officer, which
Something
always
like that.
felt like a title that they just kind of said like, well, we need something for Peter.
Right.
Esports.
Yeah, I guess esports.
Give him esports.
Focus on that.
P Sports.
Yeah. That's a totally different thing. So yeah, I wish him the best. That's
definitely.
That's an awesome gig for him, and the industry is he will be missed in video games. Xbox Game Pass. They just announced this morning.
Man.
I didn't see this. What is
so
that?
this is a $10 a month service where you will get access to over 100 Xbox One and 360 games as downloads. Not like PlayStation Now, where it's a streaming solution. It's like the EA Access program that they have on Xbox One, where you pay them a fee, you get access to a library, you download them and play them whenever you want. And they're saying that they'll have over 100 games. Select access will start today with around 20 games.
But this is only the alpha ring.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, this is alpha
Yeah,
ring, so
yeah.
it's not widely available,
And
and
you-
it'll go out to Xbox Live Gold members before it hits wide at some point as well.
Right.
Okay. Any particularly notable game? Like what caliber of
Halo-
games are we
Halo
talking
5 is in
about?
there.
So the games they noted, and these are not games that are necessarily in the access like as of today, but this is what they're saying for the launch lineup: Halo 5, Saints Row 4, NBA 2K16, Mad Max, Lego Batman, Mega Man Legacy Collection, Terraria, Payday 2, Gears of War Ultimate Edition, Fable 3, Soul Calibur 2, and Tekken Tag Tournament 2.
And they've said this is kind of like the Nintendo thing where games will like cycle out.
Yeah,
between
I
months,
assume
right, to
that'll
where it'll sort
be-
of like disappear.
Oh, really?
And I know GameStop investors hated this because they stock
Sure.
dropped like 5 points the minute they announced
Right.
this. So
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
This seems like it could potentially be a good value if the game's quality stays up there.
Exactly.
Like,
and if you don't hit your bandwidth cap.
well, yeah, also that.
Right.
Like, these are full game downloads of just like, well, I'm going to download everything I can, fill up this hard drive. And, oh, now I have to pay Comcast another
Right.
I wonder
$1 trillion.
if that means anything for 360 backwards compatibility, like their ongoing thing. If this de-incentivizes them towards like, why would we make this free when we could put it into our $10 streaming thing? Why would we continue
Well,
to
it
do
seems
that?
it seems like they end up with different reasons to make those games free. Like the 360 games have been free with pre-orders, where if you pre-order Fallout, you get a Fallout for 360.
That's true. Yeah,
out of the gate. So they've incentivized stuff around that.
right.
Um,
Those examples would still that would still make
they've got
sense.
games with gold, so that
Uh-huh.
seems like they would still continue with that. Well, yeah, you wonder like would they fold this into like games with gold at some point? Go like, oh, we're reducing games with gold, but if you're an Xbox Live Gold member, you can get this for $5 a month, or like what how they end up adjusting this thing.
It's kind of the same thing with PlayStation Now. I don't know. I'm always kind of confused.
Well, now
by
it's
it.
streaming. In fact,
Right.
even in the press release, they took a dig
Yeah,
at that.
they're
They're like,
like,
doesn't matter your bandwidth. blah,
Yeah,
blah,
you'll
blah."
download them. It's none of this, which
Yeah.
it feels crazy considering like you still have to download the full game. That's not necessarily better in all cases, but
Right.
But yeah, in my experience, PlayStation Now, and maybe it's just because I can be a stickler for this stuff, but I never felt like I was just straight up enjoying a game on PlayStation Now. I was always staring at it, going, "Oh, is it running right? Is it?
Yeah.
Does this feel right? Is the latency there? Should I go wired? They definitely say you should use wired, but wireless. This seems okay. Is this okay? I can't even tell anymore." And so it just became a fascinating bit of tech
Right.
that was largely popular. I mean, there are some good games on PlayStation Now, but it seems like it's largely like a bunch of PS3, PSN stuff that no one would ever want to play.
Yeah. I mean, it all depends on the games.
Yeah,
It seems like it makes sense for older games if you can literally like just download the whole thing into your system's memory and play it properly. But like I'm the same way. I don't want to deal with lag or any of that stuff, or I'm just going to be wondering if it's playing as well as it should be. Like I'd rather just have the game.
Yeah, exactly. And there'll be a discount to purchase these games if you are a member of the service. So
So it's basically EA
okay.
access, right?
yeah, it's
Just
EA
for a lot
Access
more
blown
games.
out.
Right.
Yeah. And I wonder if this then means that they will fold EA Access into this somehow. I assume EA likes the money that they're getting
Right.
for
They're
EA
$5
Access.
a month.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Still seems like PlayStation Plus is like the best value like of all these different systems because like my library of PlayStation games
no
is like
question.
gigantic now because of that. Because you want as long as you continue to pay for it, you have it forever. It's not cycling out or any of that stuff. You know.
Yeah, and the games with gold stuff is the same way. Where as long as you make sure to buy it during the 2 weeks when it's available, you have it. But yeah, I wonder how that will fit together with this stuff. Like the idea of games cycling out doesn't always sit super well with me.
All right.
I wonder if it'd be a case where like if you left it downloaded, you can continue to play it.
I think they said it would
Okay,
cycle out.
it'll just kill kill your access.
I mean, I guess
That's-
technically that's no different from like Netflix
Yeah.
and stuff
Right.
to see.
I mean, it is
but
the
Netflix
Netflix
library is much bigger than
Right.
what this sounds like anyway. So.
Yeah.
What is the transmorphers of the
Yeah.
Xbox?
I bet this. Yeah, I bet this ends up being a case where the first party stuff is almost perpetually available because Microsoft controls that
Sure.
and controls
That'll
all
be
the
nice.
money.
Yeah.
But they just make deals with third parties to cycle on for 3 months and then out or whatever it is.
Yeah, they didn't talk anything about how the actual publishers would get money for this.
Yeah,
Right.
right,
It's like, what's
yeah.
the revenue split? Is it going to be like hours played? Or
Right.
something like
And if
that?
you look at it, I mean, of the games they mentioned, like it's Warner,
yeah.
it's 2K, it's Capcom, but just with Mega Man Legacy. It's 505 with Payday and Terraria. And it's Namco with Soul Calibur and Tekken. So it seems like they they did their deals and have a handful of games to say up front.
Right.
But yeah.
People dipping their toe in.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a great first month, right, to get everybody to sign up. Like, check it out. You can play all these games, and everybody signs up and forgets to cancel or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I guess I had not considered the used game market aspect of this, where the GameStop investor would probably be like, oh shit, here's one more way we're doomed this week.
Right.
Shut down some more Simply Mac stores.
Get more Funko Pops in here.
Yeah. Yes, we need more shelf space, more Funkos.
And cap.
Spin up the Funko machine.
Right.
God. And let's see here. Middle-earth: Shadow of War, the sequel to Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Right, yeah. Like, I totally blanked on that. This trailer leaked out via Target, and then Warner went ahead and confirmed it. It is out August 22nd. That game was pretty cool, and I feel like one of the calls we blew the hardest over the last few years has been looking at the Nemesis system and saying every single game is going to use this from here on out.
And
the
we
system
haven't
is
And then
so,
like nothing did,
yeah,
right?
no one really has. It felt like the smart advancement of like the Mercenaries Deca 52 stuff. That like Call of Duty actually had a little bit of that this year or last year. But that Nemesis system seems cool. They say they're blowing it out this time to have player actions impact more characters and the environment. But also, of course, the Nemesis system will be intact as well. And they'll be revealing gameplay next week. Yeah, that first game was cool.
Wow. Next week at PAX?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Or it would be timed to PAX, so I would
Right.
assume so. But
God, PAX is next week. Jeez, man, everything's.
yeah, like I've just finally booked travel over the weekend, and it was just like, okay, all right, gotta get all this stuff ready. This game seemed like it was designed to be announced back at E3 last year, and it's been weird that it has taken this long for them to announce it. I mean, this is them announcing it last week of February and then having it out in August. That's a really weird cycle. I mean,
Someone just did the math. Like, it has to be 6 months.
right.
Before
Yeah,
like,
we need.
I don't
that
care
much,
when it is.
yes, we need that much time to spin up the pre-orders or
Right.
whatever it is. But yeah, so they did there on PSN during E3. There was a section of the store that was devoted to just like sales for games that were mentioned at E3.
Ah, right.
And there were a lot of games that were the previous entry was on the store because they were announcing a sequel.
Yeah,
Mordor was there.
that's right.
And also most obvious thing in the world and kind of, leaked out in little bits and pieces over the months, but it seemed pretty apparent that they were gearing up to announce this game.
Right.
And then it just never materialized.
Oops.
So it was just like, well, what
Something happened.
are we doing? Like I had a Warner appointment that year that was like, we have 2 unannounced games. I'm like, oh, okay, awesome, cool. Yeah, I would love to see the Middle-earth sequel.
Right.
And then it ended up being like Batman VR, and I forget what the other one was.
Wow.
Yeah. It's weird that it took this long. Weird that it's on that short of a cycle. But I don't know. There's something about these short announced to release cycle I think I kind of like.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
less. It's get the game in my hands sooner.
Dyack was right. That was his. He wanted the shorter cycle, right? I can never remember what the.
He wanted a lot of things.
Well,
okay.
yeah, I was
Fair
gonna
enough, fair
say
enough.
he just
Okay.
didn't want to show his games
Yeah.
ever to
Okay.
anybody.
Fair enough.
Not done yet.
Yeah.
right.
So this is a long story that you seemed like you'd been able to pick apart here.
Yep.
A little bit that the game industry. This is I believe off of Kotaku. The game industry is lobbying against your right to repair consoles.
Yeah. My understanding is this is primarily about a Nebraska law that they're trying to enact, and it's the right to repair. And the law, I think the way it's written, requires manufacturers to provide a way to get replacement parts, provide schematics, and I think most crucially, the ability to sort of roll back firmware if a new version kind of breaks whatever is going on. Game industry is not super excited about that.
Rolling back firmware is like the last thing anyone in the game industry
Yeah.
wants.
Right.
to ever
Yeah. It's like,
allow.
oh, here's the way to jailbreak the system,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Or whatever.
Do you know for how long the period is?
I don't think it's actually specified in there,
Yeah.
but it's
Okay.
obviously a long enough period because it is repair.
That's- yeah,
right.
exactly,
So
yeah.
you'd imagine that window is pretty wide. I mean, I think we talked about this earlier. I have repaired 360s and I fix arcade and pinball machines and everything like that. Like, I like to fix things. I think it's people's right to be able to fix things. How accessible that might need to be, like, a law. I don't know, but
yeah, like
this is
I
interesting.
understand why the industry would be against this if it involves like a firmware
The
rollback
firmware
situation.
seems like
that's
a
the,
big-
the thing where you go like, okay,
Right.
well,
Yeah.
clearly that's why they would do this.
Yeah,
because
it's like software update. I think what
Right.
they said, if that breaks it.
Yeah. Like if someone could roll an 11.3 3DS back to 11.2,
Mhm.
then like they can do all kinds of bad shit.
Right.
But I mean, honestly, if a software update breaks it,
But,
they're going to
that's-
fix it pretty soon anyway, right? It's not that's
Well,
going to be a problem for everybody.
unless it bricks a system or something like that.
Yeah, or
And,
like
removes
if- I see.
functionality
Yeah,
or something,
yeah.
right? Because
like
it's
the other OS stuff on a PlayStation,
Right.
you know,
See.
there'd be a way to bring some of that back.
Yeah.
Or PlayStation 3, I guess I should say.
I mean, this is something that we've run into with preservation, right?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we saw on Twitter what's like the power gig drums and guitar no
Yeah,
longer
right.
work.
Right. They patched out support for Rise of the Sixth String.
Yeah.
How could they do that?
Yeah.
So
Nothing-
I wonder, like, if, like, I mean, obviously, all two people that bought that game,
right.
one of them being you,
Yeah.
would probably be. I feel like they would be entitled to something from Microsoft if you contacted them and said, "Hey, I bought this, and now your firmware breaks it."
Yeah,
Like,
I should try
yeah,
that. I
you
should
should.
see what happens. I
Yeah.
mean, it's one of those like things are inevitably going to get support is going to get removed, right? As those costs no longer make economic sense.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I think no one has challenged. I think these right to repair laws in court, or at least not in the games industry. But it'll be interesting to see how that plays
Yeah.
out.
Like some of that stuff has
Right.
happened around phones.
Yeah, exactly.
and-
Like being able to jailbreak your phone
Yeah.
or unlock it and things like
Yeah,
that.
and
Like
I know,
certain
like-
states, you can do it like right away.
And Apple is now saying that some third-party repairs will not invalidate your warranty.
Right.
They've made some changes around that relatively recently.
Yeah, they had
So-
that home button issue, right?
Yeah,
Where like all of a
yeah.
sudden like Touch ID wouldn't work. So
So certainly not unheard of in modern tech.
Yeah. I think phones is going to be kind of the leading edge because that affects the most number of people. But
Mhm.
you can see why the games industry would kind of jump on the boat of like, let's not have these as laws.
Mm.
And then a couple of additional quick things here. Breath of the Wild has been leaked out. I don't know if it's in a playable state, but it sounds like the Wii U version exists on Nintendo's servers in a way that people can get at. And as such, there are spoilers for a ton of things, names, places, all sorts of stuff as people are disassembling files and pulling it apart.
Wow.
So be careful
Stay off
out
the
there.
internet.
Stay off the internet if that's something you care about. I guess I don't know if the game is okay. It will allegedly become playable according to this Kotaku article.
So someone was able to effectively download it.
Oh no,
from
okay.
the
Yeah, so it's images. Yeah, people were able
Okay.
to, and this is Nintendo's CDNs have been open in a lot of really crazy ways for a lot of years. And so that part isn't necessarily surprising, but okay, no, it apparently is playable.
Okay.
Apparently the game is playable. So there's someone was running a stream.
I can wait 2 more days.
Yeah.
I waited this long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 more days.
If anything, it'll be fascinating to see how the Wii U version of that game runs. I saw some translated like French article that had some stuff that made it sound not so great. But as you might imagine, much like with Twilight Princess, they were not very forthcoming with the Wii U version of that.
Yeah, I'll be super curious how many of those are out there, how rare it becomes, if there are any differences in the games, or what.
Well, they
differences
haven't
there
previewed
are.
it anywhere, right?
I mean,
You've had
we
no
played it
chance.
on a Wii U.
Oh, you did?
Before
Okay.
they announced the Switch.
Oh.
They showed it at E3.
All right, that's
Sure,
right.
yeah.
Forgot about that.
But so there was that. But
Right.
yeah, since then it hasn't necessarily been something they've been talking a lot about.
I want it just as like an item, like it's
Yeah.
like a thing. It's like it's kind of like with the Twilight Princess. I got the GameCube versions too because they were just gonna be
Yeah.
like rare.
Well, that was a cool one because it was flipped. So there was like
I actually
that
prefer
weird-
that one, yeah.
And there were reasons for there are reasons people like that version better, even just beyond the flipping. I forget what the
just controller.
Well, you can
Yeah.
control the camera. You can
That's
control
right,
those Zelda
yeah.
controls with the controller.
like
yeah.
it was like technically it looked a little worse because it was a less powerful platform, but I think that was probably a slightly better version. If you go look at the review scores, I might say that is 0.1 better than the Wii version of the game. Not that we compared across platforms. Look, not going to get into it. So that stuff's out there. Be careful. Speaking of streaming, Twitch is going to start selling the games that streamers play.
This makes perfect sense.
This also off of Kotaku.com. Twitch put up a blog post. They have a new game sales program, and that will basically put a buy now button on stream pages, and then those streamers will get cut in a percentage. Let's see here. Or let's see. Purchases made through Twitch will earn the buyer a Twitch crate filled with digital rewards like special icons and the like. So that's another thing that they are looking to.
Yeah, well, they had
sweeten
the
pot, I guess.
Prime thing, right? Where you could
Twitch Prime,
yeah.
where you could like have a free subscription to a channel every month and you get a free game and stuff like that.
And the subscription gave money to the channel.
Yeah, to the channel that you liked, and yeah. So
I assume that all links up to Amazon stuff.
Almost certainly.
Yeah. I mean that's almost surprising that hasn't happened before now, right? When Amazon bought them, I was like, okay, well they're definitely adding that.
But at the same time, like it's Ubisoft, but I was gonna say like a lot of these companies that are part of the program out of the gate, Vlambeer, Campo Santo. Vlambeer's been selling games on Twitch through weird, awesome ways for a while now. Double Fine, High Res Studios, Digital Extremes, Ubisoft, Telltale, Tiny Build, Raw Fury, Versus Evil, and a handful of others. It seems like a lot of them would be downloads. I mean, Amazon does do download business, but as well as physical stuff. But I wonder how much of this will. I wonder if the Ubisoft ones in particular would like click through to the ability to get a physical copy from Amazon or whatever. But
seems like having any other big player in the market besides Steam, like as a way of getting games, is a good thing. Just to have more variety out there. I mean,
competition, breeds innovation, right?
Yeah, you have to wonder if this will impact the ecosystem at Twitch in terms of which games people stream and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
If it turns into
really
like,
point.
okay, well now I'm just gonna. Even if I'm not streaming this game, I'm going to say I'm streaming this game because this game has a buy now button on it.
Right.
Or I'd imagine that they would moderate against that. But
that will be interesting.
But yeah, people playing newer games because people are more apt to buy them.
Yeah.
And they're going to get more of a cut of it rather than, continue speed running whatever, Mario 64.
It's been one of the reasons why we've been reluctant to have affiliate links and stuff like that on the site over the years. Back at GameSpot, we had them for a long time, but it was very much buried. It was not alongside a review. It was never like because you never wanted to even create the impression that I'm going to give this a higher score because if you buy it, I get a cut. Like it was as far removed as it could be while still being there.
Right.
But like we've had people that run digital storefronts for PC games and stuff come and say like, hey, maybe would you be into being part of our affiliate program and this and that. It's like it doesn't. Like, no.
Yeah, would you be? Like, I mean, you're going to be less critical, right? You're not going to have a buy it now button next to your channel where like, this game sucks. No one should buy this.
And some people will because they're going to be big enough streamers that they don't give a fuck.
Right.
But you could envision a scenario where someone talks about how great a game is because they know they'll get a cut.
Or a bigger cut.
Or a bigger, or some kind of cut from the sales of the game.
You just got to be like, buy it now to see how bad this game is.
Right. Yeah. Just refuse to stream it at all. And just go like, you need to buy this game, you guys. I'm not even going to show you. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's an interesting program that seems like it would have some caveats, but that is the world in which we live. So I guess I can't be mad at it. And last news story. This is a feel-good story. BU has recovered the $10,000 of PAL SNES games that were lost in the mail.
What happened? What the hell happened?
So I guess let's see here.
Was it in the corner of a UPS like?
Like the label had
yeah.
been removed from the package. So at some point the label was received, and it was like, well, great, now this is definitely gone.
Oh man,
it's
like a ransom note,
and potentially because of some of the media stuff around it, like it eventually resurfaced and was delivered.
Yeah.
So this was some stuff that maybe not irreplaceable, but some of the stuff certainly would have been very rare. Estimated to be worth about $10,000. So this was a shipment from Germany from a collector to BU, who's an emulator author that is also devoted to kind of like basically like dumping these Super Nintendo games, these Super Famicom games in ways that are like not just spitting out SFC files or something.
Right.
Like
He's doing things like looking at the memory address, like a lot of things that are very detailed to where he's actually finding variations that we didn't know existed between and it might not be visible in the ROM or when you're playing the game, but there is a revision here from this version of a game to another. And
interesting.
He's just like, he's doing a lot more sort of forensic examination of everything. And so, this European collector was sending him batches of 100. This one disappeared, and I think it was about to be like auctioned off in like a lost postal thing.
Oh God!
Before
Mark knows about that.
I'm having flashbacks.
Yeah, sorry. It's hard to bring up bad memories, but so it was kind of like that. But he had a postal employee who was just like, okay, like someone told them they found it, and it's like, oh no, we actually didn't. And then another guy's like, okay, I have it. It is being sent back to you. It is here.
I see. So this process the guy's doing to do all this stuff is pretty complicated then, huh? Because I was gonna say, why doesn't he just fly to Germany for a week and like do it at the guy?
Oh no,
he has a one-of-a-kind dumping setup. Yeah, it sounds like they're working on miniaturizing or getting to a way.
But it's like a full
affordable,
tower and
it's a full PC and everything and all that.
And it'll take like months for him to dump these things. The way he's doing it, right?
Wow.
It's not a simple like, okay, next one.
Sure.
That's been fascinating to follow. I mean, Bu's like whole thing with that emulator, with the way like there's a dedication to detail there that a lot of other emulator authors simply don't approach.
Yeah.
In a way that is like crazy, and I totally appreciate it. It's like, man, this is awesome. It's really going deep on this stuff.
What is his emulator?
Hygan is called.
Hygan.
It used to be BSNES.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's like work that he's doing and what Kevtris is doing with the FPGA work is just we know some of these things are going to start disintegrating, and having a way to emulate it as accurately as possible is a huge thing, and really appreciate the work that he's doing.
Yeah, I've followed emulation for a couple of decades now, just as that stuff has grown from like, hey, you can play a Game Boy, hey, you can play an 8-bit NES game, but everything is yellow because it's a shareware emulator.
This icon looks like balls.
Yeah. Also, yes. Here's some balls. Like that stuff's been really fascinating. Like it's been neat to see the stuff that isn't getting emulated well, like Jaguar. Or like the original Xbox. Saturn is finally kind of coming along in a meaningful way, but for years Saturn was just beyond people.
Yep.
The hardware is insane. So
just the timing issues and stuff like that. It's been crazy to see. We're going to take one more break and then come back for emails. We're also going to say goodbye to Mark and John.
Oh, goodbye. Sorry to
Get
have
out.
To, sorry to have to leave.
Yeah.
Sorry to have to leave early.
Actual
Thanks
meetings,
for having us,
proper work. But thanks so much for coming by.
No, as always. Thank you guys for having us.
Look forward to this every year.
Absolutely.
And Drew, bye. This is your last.
That's right. We're gonna miss the last hour-long tribute to Drew, I guess. Here, the greatest clips episode finale.
If you're around on Friday, then you might
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Check some of that stuff out. But yeah, we'll be back after this break. And we are back. Thanks to Mark and John for hanging out. Their podcast 84 Play is available on giantbomb.com.
Yeah.
And I'm here with Steve Lynn from the Video Game History Foundation. But it's so new. Like I mean, you've done all kinds of stuff around before.
I have
throughout like mobile and stuff. Every time I pick up the Gree knife to open a package.
You guys still have that, right?
I still have the Gree knife.
Yeah, the swag that keeps on giving.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So much mail has been opened with the Gree blade.
The Gree blade.
Yeah.
A couple years ago. But,
So just to maybe dig in a little bit more on some of this. Some of the dumping stuff that Bu's doing with that, like, do you get the impression that there's a ton of stuff out there that we just haven't found or haven't noticed when it comes to those types of revisions?
Well, for the people who care, yes, definitely. I think one of the things that's actually where you see sort of the most variation is in PC gaming, because so many of like the old games that we have that are archived are because of piracy. In fact, we're showing a game at GDC that's a Virtual Boy game that was only out because of pirates. And when pirates, there's a great part. You can play this game, but they make changes, right?
Yes.
I think it was famous like Oregon Trail, like the ROM that most people download or the disk image already has a save file on it, so it's not original,
right?
And that's something that we're trying to do. It's especially for people who have like these new unboxed collections, or whenever someone's opening a sealed game, it's like, well, let's dump this.
Sure.
Let's not do anything to this. And you see like trainers and those like released by whatever on a lot of ROMs. Just trying to get that out. And then what we said is when you see revisions, what's taken out is just as important as what's in there, because you can say like, okay, why was that changed?
Like, was some bug fixed? Was there, what's the, obviously the games get patched all the time now.
Right.
And that's been, like, that stuff's even harder to maintain, I'm sure, just in terms of archiving, like, interim patches. Because you always, with console games today, you'll have the version on the disc, and then you'll have the latest version.
Right.
But who's got every patch in between?
Everything in between. Yeah. I mean, like patched games, and especially like games that are like effectively a service. One of the things we talk about is how do you archive Farmville? Right. And a lot of people are like, Farmville, it's just Farmville. It's like, this is a seminal game. It's such for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's an important part of game history, and it's alive. Like World of Warcraft, people are doing, here's the first version of the server or something like that. It's like, how do you replicate that? So,
and watching people even, just the community that tried to, and I don't know, I think they might still be trying to do something like Enter the Matrix.
Yeah,
like run private servers for that, or like the one I always go back to is Auto Assault.
Yeah.
Or even like City of Heroes. Like where's that? Like I would love to be able to play City of Heroes again. Through whatever means.
Right. So I ran some mobile games that were live, and one thing we did when we archived everything was actually put out full instructions on here's the version of the server you need, here's how you set it up.
Oh, cool.
No one's probably gonna ever bring it back up, but sure, why not? If at least provide the instructions there. It's an extra step, but it is something that might mean something further down the road. The stuff that BU's doing, finding these variations it's almost like, oh my gosh, this goes a layer deeper than we thought it did.
Right.
Right. Like,
yeah.
Uh-oh.
Because I used to think about, images of Super Famicom games as just being easy and plain unless there were additional chips on the board for Super Effects stuff or whatever. But it wasn't like the NES. It wasn't like mapper whatever, mapper this, mapper that, mapper that. So to hear that he's like uncovered what sounds like it's like that layer for this, I'm like, oh no.
It's like, God. Oh boy. And it kind of also goes to show that there are still things to be discovered. Like we're still finding Atari 2600 games, that were never released. Now there's a ton of those that were like mail order only, or literally door to door sales. In the case of some games, and I think with NES, we talked to a bunch of publishers or people that were sort of near the top of the food chain in the NES days, where everyone was just pitching them everything, right? Yeah, because everybody wanted to get a game in, and so there's like probably hundreds, if not thousands, of games that are at some stage of development that never got out. And I think what's really cool is you can see inspiration, especially if someone worked on a game that never got released, but then worked on something that did. Yeah. It's like, oh, here's where they kind of cut their teeth and learned how to do something, and then it came out. I think
probably one of the more famous examples I think of that is like Thrill Kill on the PlayStation. Right. Where like Wu-Tang is just that game. Yeah. With Wu-Tang inserted into it instead of whatever dumb characters they had for Thrill Kill.
Yeah. And it wasn't a good game then. It's not a good game with Wu-Tang on it.
They did not make it that much better. The soundtrack was better, but even then, not by that much.
I mean, that's one of the other things is rarely do we find a game that's unreleased that's good. That makes sense, I guess, and if you look at it on the end of the day. But
NBA Elite, though, that was
not many people played that game.
Yeah.
The Andrew Bynum T-pose. So there's a funny story behind that, actually. I could probably tell that by now. Yeah. NBA Elite didn't ship. Most famously a game that they actually made it to production. I have a sealed copy of it. It's like got the hologram and everything, and like NBA Jam.
Did both versions get out? Was it 360 and PS3, or did just retail PS3 get out?
Just retail PS3 got out. I saw a disc for Xbox like in the early days, but I've never seen it again. So, and then we have review versions of it, so that people can play. But one of the things, like before the game got released on YouTube, there was a video of a guy who's playing it, and Andrew Bynum's like standing in the middle of the court in a T-pose, right? And so I heard this story from someone at EA that's no longer there, not Peter Moore. That they were making that new SSX game, and
I think I heard this story.
Right, so there would be times where every once in a while, randomly, one of the characters would go into the T-pose, like while they were snowboarding. Yeah, and QA couldn't replicate it. They're getting closer and closer to to the ship date. And so they just like basically wrote in, if that ever happens, just crash. Just like crash out to the desktop.
Rather than deal with the public relations nightmare of another game with that exact issue.
Yeah. And so, it's random stories like that. Some can be credited, some can't be. But it's super fascinating to hear about, like the Wing Commander thing, right? When you would exit Wing Commander, it would throw out this error. And they couldn't fix it. And so finally this went in the hex editor and changed it to say, thank you for playing Wing Commander, right? Yeah, fixed, done, right? Nothing else bad happens, and so it's trying to find like those things. It's like, okay, maybe there was some weird bug or like some sometimes they patch out, like programmers who were being a little cheeky or something, right? Or, what if they, got rid of hot coffee before it made it to the disk? Who knows?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's been one of the fun things about that wiki, the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
And seeing like them documenting like a lot of the programmer notes that are in code. That Sega Smash Pack for Dreamcast,
Right.
where it's just like programmer writing to pirates,
Right.
like with details about how to insert different Genesis ROMs into the emulator he wrote.
Yeah.
You're just like, what? Why would you? Well, I mean, if you didn't like working for Sega, this is exactly the sort of
Right.
thing you would do.
Or,
But-
it's like, hey, this is really versatile. I just wrote something really cool.
But it's only going to be used for these 20 games,
Right.
And so, yeah,
No, like maybe people want to play something more than like Dynamite Heady.
maybe,
Yeah, maybe. Columns.
yeah, maybe columns.
Yeah.
Why don't we take some emails here? Bombcast@giantbomb.com is the email address. You can hit us up, and we will go through your questions and find some answers. This comes from Bobby. He wrote in and wanted to know, did they rush the Switch for financial reasons? Hey, gang. I saw the Switch presentation on January 12th. I was so on board, I pre-ordered it that night at 2 different retailers in case one of them overpromised. Roughly 10 days later, I canceled them both when I realized the only game I felt comfortable paying for a full price for between now and holiday is on the Wii U and doesn't seem to be appreciably worse. I don't know. I feel like I've heard slightly differently about that, but okay. Since then, we've seen feature after feature get punted down the calendar, most notably the Virtual Console. I take this as signs that the thing is undercooked and could have benefited from 6 more months of console or game development time. Since March is the end of the fiscal year, how much do you think that they felt the pressure to kick this thing out the door by now, and how much might they regret that line of thinking in the future? Yeah, I think that, like the fiscal year is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
For companies, it leads to a lot of decisions. I don't know that the Switch feels half baked.
No. I mean, yeah, we talked about it earlier, right?
Yeah.
Some things aren't there, like Virtual Console, or something
Yeah,
they're going
but-
to roll out, but they would probably do that anyway.
Yeah, I feel like there are decent business reasons to not necessarily have that stuff in place. I think their online service is maybe the big question mark for me, but they
Right.
don't necessarily have too many games that would take advantage of such a thing. So
Right.
that's not the end of the world.
I think the way just hypothetically, but they had Zelda ready, they had a couple other games ready, and we're going to have a bunch of people buying this. Anybody's buying a console in March, right?
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're going to be someone who probably already has another console. This
Yeah.
isn't get all the families and everything.
Mhm.
What you might want to do is launch it, because everybody who wants to play Zelda is probably going to buy this, like, with the exception of this guy, and that'll have a user base. They'll get to work out any of the weird bugs that might show up.
Right.
Like you said, this kind of mini ambassador program type thing.
Yeah.
They've got a bunch of these indie titles that are cool to play, and then hopefully an installed base by like end of summer as you start to really
Right.
push.
And
right?
then-
And E3's in the middle of that.
Right,
So.
and then theoretically, by the time they do start to ramp up for holiday, they've got a fan base in place, they've got a
Right.
user base in place, they've worked out their kinks, and the software starts to become more readily available.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, Mario is there.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. This isn't like that Saturn thing where they just like dropped it. And
Right.
everybody's like, what?
Yeah, this seems like this was the plan for at least a good chunk of time.
Right. Right.
So even though I think the thing that has shocked a lot of people is just how little they talked about it.
Yeah.
And how tight their window from announced to ship ended up being.
Yeah. I mean, it was probably smaller than I think any console I can remember.
Yeah. But at the same time, like they had been talking to a lot of developers for not every developer, but they've been talking to partners for some time before that. So at least the groundwork was being laid. Like this Nindies announcement today reminds me of a conversation I had last year when someone who would know said like, hey, it seems like Nintendo was going a lot harder after indie stuff this time around.
Probably because they saw how PS4 had sort of benefited from a lot of that.
Yeah,
early on,
it fills in a lot of gaps in the portfolio, and also it's just how games are now.
Mhm.
The B tier, the THQs and Midways of the world aren't there, so you got to have something.
Yeah.
And those indie games have definitely filled the gap for PS4 and for Xbox
Yeah.
One. So
I mean, but to his point, like you were saying, the fiscal year and quarterly. I mean, you got to show profits every quarter,
Yeah.
and at this point, they're like, we've been bleeding money for a really long time. We effectively killed the Wii U. We need to have something in the pipe. So,
Yeah. So it all lines up pretty well, but I don't necessarily think that means that they would have been in that much better a place if they had started 6 months earlier or launched 6 months later or anything like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it would have been that different.
Right.
James writes in from the good part of Kansas City, Missouri, he says. Hoping you can shed some light on something as the Switch launch gets closer. I am making room in the cabinet. All Switch marketing material and demos that I have seen show the Switch in a vertical position. I also have a 1-year-old, so locking it up and keeping it out of reach is important. But my shelves are not that tall. Can the Switch be put on its side? Have you seen one laying that way? Would it affect the docking procedure and console actually staying in there?
There are some head nods in there.
You cannot have that thing
like pizza oven style. No.
It just, there's nothing latching it in there and having it stay in there, so I think it would just fall out.
Oh.
Like you drop it in the dock and that's it, and then when you lift it up, it's very easy out.
Okay.
So there's kind of nothing holding it in place.
I wonder if you could like put a pencil underneath it or something to tilt it back just
Right,
a little
just
bit
enough.
so that it doesn't fall out. But
Like
yeah,
NES
it's not.
carts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a it's not a. There's no click. It's just
Right.
It's sitting on top of the USB-C connector.
Oh, so it doesn't actually. Does the USB-C connector actually plug in
Yeah.
when you're in the dock?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And that's not enough like tension to kind of hold it in there.
No.
It might be if it was like just laying flat,
Okay.
like having no gravity either way.
But also the thing to remember is that the Switch dock is hollow. It is super light.
Okay.
So like
Oh,
you would pick it up, if there was tension on the USB-C connection, you would just pick the entire thing up with the Switch.
Yeah.
Because it is so light.
Wow.
So the whole thing just kind of just drifts right out of it.
I mean, that's maybe an accessory, right? So
yeah.
someone had like someone's gonna steal Drew's idea here, and it's gonna be basically an angled dock for the dock.
An angled dock, or I wonder, how easy it would be to just kind of make your own dock, because the USB-C standard is a standard. There is HDMI over USB-C. Like,
like plugging into almost like a
just a hub.
Yeah, a hub. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Instead of the dock, like the dock just seems like a hub. It's got 3 regular USB ports on it.
Right.
It's got a USB-C port for power to go into the dock.
Oh.
And then it's got HDMI, and that's it.
Huh.
So there's not that much going on in that thing. So I suspect that alternate docking situations are possible.
Yeah, I mean, if you have, like you said, a 1-year-old kind of like
Yeah.
crawling around grabbing onto things,
Right.
that's gonna suck. If
Yeah,
it's on
yeah.
top of
I
it.
also wonder, like I don't know that Nintendo has really said anything one way or the other about the Joy-Con signal loss issue that some people have experienced. In terms of just like the controller being away from the tablet and losing sync.
And what if it's inside a cabinet,
Right.
or something?
Yeah, because it seemed like a big part of that was covering the controller. For me, I had to turn around and put my body between the controller and the tablet to get it to happen. I was not able to get it to happen with a Pro controller, but I didn't spend that much time trying to make it happen either, so I can't necessarily say that it's bulletproof. And so closing it in a cabinet, depending on what sort of situation you're in with like other signals, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, whatever in the house happening, that could be a factor. I don't really know.
Well, I'll find out on Friday,
yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. I feel like my Best Buy order was listed for Thursday delivery.
Oh.
And I don't know if that's actually going to happen or not. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, there were certain retailers that were communicated that they were,
stealing.
Well,
Yeah.
there's that,
yeah.
but there were some that were saying that they could break street date. They could be convinced to break street date. So
Yeah.
but yeah, this is one of those, like, logistically, they want you to have it on Friday, or you're gonna
Right.
like scream. So maybe
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, we'll do Thursday.
Yeah, better to have it be a day early
Right.
than 2 days late. Coming out on
Exactly.
a Friday.
Oh yeah,
you know,
you'd have to wait for the whole weekend.
Right.
Oh man, they're driving me crazy.
Yeah, that would be a bad situation.
Yeah.
We got a question for Drew here
What's up?
from Mark. Mark asks, Mark's from Vancouver.
All
So
right.
take that into consideration.
Vancouver, BC.
Yeah.
All right.
Not knowing what Drew's plans are after Giant Bomb or whether he'll even continue working in video game coverage, I'd love to hear what his most memorable moments were over the last 8 years covering the video game industry from behind and occasionally in front of the camera.
Man.
Anything that jumps out? I think we're probably going to talk a little bit more about this on Friday, I think. But
Yeah, I was planning on like just going down a video memory lane
Yeah.
on Unprofessional Fridays.
Yeah.
Just pulling up old videos and watching them and stuff. But,
Yeah. So we'll have that.
Like NCAA basketball montage style.
yes. Yeah. Yeah, gosh, immediate things that jump out. Like I love going to E3. A lot of good memories spent on, well, it was stressful at the time, but like running around to all those press conferences with Vinny and all the camera equipment and setting up on the risers and all that stuff. It's like it's one of those things that you look back on and go like, man, like how did we do that?
Yeah.
But that was really rewarding. You know, going to places like South Korea and Iceland and Valve and, you know, event coverage and PAX and like just so much cool stuff. And
yeah, the travel stuff is often the out of the office big stuff is usually the most rewarding, hardest, weirdest stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but there's, you know, I've worked here for 8 years. Like there's a lot of just around the office kind of stuff that, you know, just I'll remember occasionally. And
I think about chugging those Cokes.
Yeah. I think, was that the first time?
That might have been the first time
I appeared on video.
It might have been, yeah.
I haven't watched that video in a long time. Maybe
Same
we'll
here.
have to pull that one up for Friday. But
yeah. I thought about maybe grabbing a Coke and seeing if I could beat my old time.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be fun.
It was Mythic was doing it. The EA
Okay.
studio, Paul Barnett, they posted a video of them trying to chug Cokes as fast as they possibly could.
Was this like the double down eating competition like that?
It was around
like
the
that?
same time,
Okay.
probably.
Right,
yeah. But yeah, I don't know.
What was the time?
I forget.
I don't know.
We'd have to go back and watch. But yeah, it's been a long time since I've even drank a regular Coke at this point.
The endurance run was really fun. Like I think a lot about recording in that Sausalito basement.
Yeah.
Because it was like, you know, mixers propped up on boxes, and I was right next to you guys, and everyone had to be quiet because it was just it was a one-room schoolhouse of an office where everything happened. And it felt very much like bootstrappy and just fun.
Yeah, I miss. There's something I really miss about not having everything all in one room because I feel like I know less. There was something about hearing every video get recorded that was like, oh, I'm up on this game now because I was doing something over here while it was being recorded, and so I absorbed some information. I felt like a little better informed when we were all in one room.
I think it probably led to the way that Giant Bomb still kind of works, which is like we all have kind of a sense of what we want to do and what needs to be done, and we all kind of you know, work together to do it.
Yeah,
and I think that was probably born out of the way that first Sausalito basement worked.
Yep. Yeah. Small crew. Everyone had to do kind of a little bit of everything.
Yep.
That part hasn't necessarily changed that much.
No.
Though I'm gonna have to get Jason to brief me on how the new studio stuff works, because now that it's all changed, I have no idea what any of it is.
Yeah.
This question comes in from Christian in Iowa City, and he says, next week I'll be flying halfway across the country for a work event, and this will be my first time in the air since high school over 10 years ago. As a result, I've been getting progressively more apprehensive about the flight and the whole process. Am I going to get stuck at the airport due to a layover screw and missed connecting flight? Will the plane decide it is tired of this whole staying in the air thing and decide to turn into a roller coaster? Will I spend the entire flight crying about Drew leaving and end up in the air marshal handcuffs? This rusty flyer would greatly appreciate any airport and flight advice. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, you were like still had stuff in storage here, but you were working up in Vancouver for a while, right?
I was going back and forth. In fact, when we first got bought by Gree, I was going to Japan once a month, and then when I was in Vancouver, I was coming down like twice a month. Drake still destroyed me in terms of miles. You know, things are going to happen. I think it's really just kind of rolling with what's going on. There is like a little bit of prep. You know, if you really are apprehensive about the flight, things like meditation or finding what are those things that can calm you down or distract you. Sometimes for a lot of people, it's music, right? So having things like loaded on your phone and, you know, carrying a charger in your bag in case you have like stuck on a layover. You know, even if you get trapped at the airport, they're not going to have you probably sleep at the airport, right? They're gonna
at some point they'll voucher you out. And
Yeah,
go like,
yeah.
There's a hotel up the street.
right. Here's some money. Go to or a voucher. Go get something at Burger King and come back in a couple hours. Like nothing will really be the end of the world. Like aside from like
An actual
catastrophic
disaster,
thing, yeah, and
which
like
is
yeah.
exceedingly rare.
Yeah, I mean, the odds of you like getting hit crossing the street are much higher, right? So, for me, it's always been just preparing for kind of whatever I can. Like I said, having a battery pack, having a charger, because the phone seems to be a lifeline for a lot of people.
It's the only, definitely keeping your phone charged so you can get a hold of anybody.
Yeah,
Especially if something like a flight gets canceled and you do end up weirdly stranded, or
Right.
something dramatic happens. You're like, okay, well, I need to figure things out. That's going to be how you do it.
yeah. Having a credit card where you can charge something if you need to. Some people, it's like earplugs and gum when you're descending. For me, it was always having something to read because for a long time you couldn't have your phone on during
right,
takeoff. It's
yeah.
like, and then you're reading through like SkyMall, which doesn't exist anymore. So now you got to read whatever they put in front of you.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Or the instructions on the barf bag.
I've read a lot of bad in-flight magazines. Like I read all the travel stuff, and it's all the 3 days in Venice. And I was like reading it, going like, I'm never gonna go to fucking Venice. What am I even doing? Drew, has flying a plane made you more apprehensive of flying commercial or less, or has it changed anything about your relationship to the air?
Less apprehensive. Like, I feel like I understand more what's going on.
Yeah.
Like when you're taking off.
That sounds scary.
No,
I understand what's really going on. And
like when you're taking off and the plane turns sharply and you're like, oh, is this supposed to happen? Like,
right,
I don't know.
right.
Are we gonna crash? Like, I know now why things are happening. But before I had any of that knowledge, my trick was always to like, when like for example, a plane turns like that, and it feels weird. And this is maybe only works for me and is kind of dark, but I knew that everything was fine as long as no one was screaming. So even though the plane was doing weird turns, like if no one was screaming,
the assumption that everyone else is just like, this is normal, whatever.
then you can just relax. So
I did freak
my
out
trick.
everybody on a plane once when we were about to take off, right? So we're all getting ready, and it was when Brad was playing that Call of Duty level on the plane.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it like streaming,
Yeah.
and he did it like right before it turned everything off, and I went, yeah, I literally screamed a cheer, and then everybody turned to me. I'm like, it's a video thing. I'm sorry, but it was once I'm on an airplane, I just yelled out. That was probably not the best idea, but I was so excited that he.
At least you weren't like, Giant Bomb. Like
Giant Bomb.
That could have gone way
those
worse.
airplane terrorrists, like,
Yeah.
oh man.
Yeah, he totally saved that airplane from those terrorists over at Giant Bomb. Wait, what? Stop, wait, ow.
You're hurting me.
Yeah, I guess that could have gone way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. My airplane stuff came like what really put me at ease with flying is flying enough to where the airport is not a thing.
Right.
Where that's like an automatic procedure to the point where like when there are people you perceive to be doing it wrong, you get a little mad. Like flying just that much to where you start to get an attitude about it. Because then at least like I know exactly, I got it cold. This is where I park the car. This is where the bus to the terminal is. We get to the terminal. I do this. Like knowing that about as many different airports as possible.
Right.
Is what put me at ease. Flying to airports for the first time, like it's kind of weirdly exciting, but also there's that little bit of just like, okay, obviously there's gonna be a sign for ground transportation, and I'm gonna get a taxi. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal, but there is still that little bit of just like, I just don't want to get lost in this fucking airport.
Yeah.
Or walk out the wrong exit and then have to, like, where am I even going?
Yeah.
So for me, it just became about like knowing, like having it down pat to the point where like getting through security is just easy. You're just like, I know, take this stuff out, do this, take these off, go through the security theater and all that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is you guys in the States, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to another country or even like another planet. Like everybody's going to speak English. Like it's not like customs are going to be so different. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah.
I would also say like if you haven't been, if you haven't flown a lot, like give yourself way more time than you think you need.
Also,
because like if you have all day to do this and you have no other plans at the end of the day, then like, oh, a 3-hour delay. Oh well, like there's nothing I can do about it. Just wait until it's your turn.
I guess I'm gonna go eat.
Yeah, guess I'll go eat.
I'll go eat something.
Grab a beer.
Yeah.
A lot of people self-medicate with alcohol.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work for me because it wears off before the flight is over, and then you're just like,
now you're hungover in the air, and you get dehydrated. Anyway
definitely drink water. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't sound like a super long flight, but don't get wasted on a plane. That's the worst. Like, a lot of people have done it, but you hungover before you land, and it's the worst.
I got wasted and got on a plane, and it was a San Francisco to New York flight, and luckily I had drank enough to where I was not actually sober by the time we landed, but still, bad fucking time.
Hydrate.
Yeah, just take your time.
Yeah.
And know that there will just prepare yourself that there will be delays.
Yeah.
And it's like sitting in traffic. Like if you like, oh, I'm sitting in traffic, grr! But if you just like, well, this is going to add a half hour to my trip.
And that's okay.
Then you're fine.
Yeah. I always end up getting to the airport way earlier than I need to.
I do the same.
Yeah, which is nice because sometimes it's like, well, now I have time to eat some horrible airport food, which I love. So
there you go.
So Kenneth writes in and says, the announcement that E3 will be open to the public this year got me thinking. As the co-host of a small podcast, I probably need to build relationships with people in the industry to help grow my brand. Is it worth shelling out the money to go to an E3, or is it better to try and find smaller venues to help make these connections? I'm assuming you guys all knew people in the industry when starting Giant Bomb. Are there any tips you can give to new podcasters on trying to find their spot in the industry? Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about how E3 is going to go this year to really say, because it might be the case that if you're walking around E3 with a public badge and not an industry badge, like you might not be seen as taking it seriously or something like that. I wonder.
Yeah, it's like, why don't you have a media badge?
Right. Yeah. If you're this podcaster, why don't you like sign up for a media badge? What do you so other venues might end up making a little more sense in that case.
Yeah.
Also, you'll find, I think, at something like PAX, like it's a little easier, and if you want to get your feet wet with building, like meeting people and all this sort of stuff, start with smaller companies that are gonna have. The indie developers are more inclined to want to meet with the press because they are literally living and dying by the sales of a game, and they like need to get the word out. So they tend to want to do that, and so that's a good way to start with this stuff, as opposed to cold calling some PR person at some AAA company and then saying, please send me some games, which just sounds like you just are trying to get free games.
Yeah, it's like we want to launch with a Miyamoto interview or something like that. It's like there's
okay,
no way.
That's unless you have, hell, I would have loved to have launched with a Miyamoto interview. I've never done a Miyamoto interview.
Oh
wow. It's yes, there are definitely ways to kind of get your feet wet with stuff and kind of get used to the process, I guess I would say, before you start swinging for the fences on that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, one of the biggest problems indies have, or actually every developer at this point, is discovery, right? So, and
the Steam front page is only getting worse.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just starting, like, you can't be like, oh, I'm better than interviewing like some guy in his garage. Like, no, you're not. You're the same thing, right? And they talk to them about what they're doing, find out their stories, get better at interviewing, get more comfortable with approaching people. And yeah, at E3, I mean, I can't remember the last time I was like walking through a hall and kind of ran into someone sort of famous or someone big in the industry. That happens more here at like GDC or DICE, but DICE is a much smaller venue, right? Yeah. But I mean, like, I didn't really run into that in GDC at E3, because E3, anybody who was sort of important always had like kind of handlers around them or were shuttling them to meetings that were booked like 3 months prior.
Exactly, right? And they were just stuck in their booth the entire time because people were coming to them for interviews.
Yeah.
We run into some people at E3 now and then. Like it's not that type of show, but there are certainly some people that will stop and say hi. But it's a rarity. It's not PAX. It's definitely not PAX, where that is a little more common.
I mean, I think the big thing is like I saw was 2 months ago. People were like, "Hey, we're booking appointments for E3," right? Yeah, and so it's
Yeah, like we've had a couple of E3 meetings all around housing. All it's been like, okay, hotel rooms and all this other stuff. And
Oh, not the house or
yeah,
the loft thing?
No.
Porn set?
No.
Oh.
We are. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. We may go back to the same venue we had. But we are going to put out feelers to see if this other place is available, which I wanted to get a couple of years ago, but didn't.
Okay. How about a giant geodesic dome in the middle of the show floor?
I would. No, definitely not that. Man,
I still remember seeing you guys in there. It was almost like a reverse aquarium.
Yeah, I mean, people literally came up to the glass and would tap on it, like we're there typing articles, like frantically working as hard as we can,
right,
on the E3 show floor in this hot plastic box, and people are coming up, tapping on the glass, and then like it's not like someone you know. It's not like you look and go, "Oh, hey!"
Right.
It's like someone just looks and you look up and they go, and then walk away.
Right.
Like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? God. Yeah, there's been a lot of weird E3 booths that I've been a part of over the years, because it was always, even when it wasn't a public show, there were always people under the impression that like this would be a good place. Like we need to put down chairs because we're going to have an audience for our stage show. And it's like, no, and there are, I mean, because there are people at the show that do have that kind of time,
right?
But they're usually waiting to see the Warner demos or something like that, you know. So it's always a little strange when stuff gets focused that way. Like one year we had a car on the show floor because there was a contest to win the car at E3.
So
for attendees could enter to win a car.
Huh.
And I think there might have been some on-site component to it.
Okay.
But it was just, none of that was facing outward to the audience at home. It was just like, there's a car in the booth. It's got a GameCube in the back of it.
Ooh.
And you're like, why is this here? And the answer is because they paid for it to be here, dumbass. And I'm like, oh, right, of course.
Got to have that sponsorship money.
Yeah, exactly. They roped it in whatever way they could back then.
I would say if you're like looking for people to get on your podcast, just email them or contact them on Twitter. Like, don't be creepy about it and like guess at their email, but like, or hit them up on Twitter and say, hey, can I email you? Something like that. Be polite and be comfortable with a lot of rejection. Yeah. And then eventually you will get something.
The rejection part's not easy. It's, it doesn't feel great, but
thing to do. But
yes.
Or get comfortable with people not getting back to you.
Right. Yeah. I don't get asked that frequently to do podcasts or anything like that. Like I would do more, I think. But yeah, it's literally like if people ask and I've got the time, I'll usually do it.
Yeah.
Depends on, it usually ends up being the time factor, but yeah.
Yeah. And especially if it's someone that you've been trying to book, like be flexible to them. It's like, I can only do like this time, right? It's like you need to open up your calendar and make sure.
Right. Like, this is probably the one thing that I would say is an exception for this show, but we've also, like, we've been doing it for a long time, so we can kind of be sticklers about like, well, if you can't make it Tuesday at 11, and if you are only, we turn down a lot of guests for this show, because we'll get outreach that is based around a game, and it'll be like they want to come on your show and talk about their game, and my response is usually to not respond, honestly, which is a terrible. I'm bad at that. But my response would be like, that's not this show.
Right.
Like that's we do other videos like that, and there are other opportunities and stuff for like us to talk to that person about a game or whatever. But like anytime we've had someone come in for like 20 minutes and leave or something like that, it's like that's a not what this show is. No one at home wants that.
Yeah.
But we've been getting, like, there's been a sharp uptick in people requesting to be guests on this show specifically, which is like cool, but the opportunities are usually like not something we would ever do. Right. So I guess that would be my other thing is, if you're only doing the podcast, like maybe consider, like, yeah, if opening up your schedule is not always an option, consider other types of content you could be making,
right,
with people to just offer that type of flexibility. Like we do video, obviously, so there's sort of a lot of different stuff that way. Let's take two more questions here, and then we'll call it here. This is from, let's just say the letter J. I don't know.
Allard?
No, it's Jay Allard. Yeah. No, I don't have a full name here. Looking for some Shinjuku advice. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Joe from Nottingham. It is here. Heading to Japan for the first time in March, and will be staying in the Shinjuku district during my stay. Any advice for a first-time visitor to the area?
Oh, well, we should have asked this with the 8-4
I
guys.
know, yeah, that's yes. But
well, their office is Shibuya. So
yeah. Shinjuku was always where I stayed when I went out there. We always stayed at the KO Plaza in Shinjuku because I think those guys, if not them directly, but it was like at the time it was GameSpot's first trips to Japan, and we were part of the same company with EGM and all that. And so that was what like Chris Johnson and those guys all recommended the KO because it was where they stayed.
Yeah.
And it just kind of just became, it felt like home in some weird way, even though it's like not close to where TGS was.
Right.
It was like an hour-and-a-half train ride or something like that. It was close to a handful of arcades, some good used game spots.
Godzilla on the Toho cinemas.
Yeah,
right there,
you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was just a good area to stay.
Yeah.
In terms of just like food and other stuff around there.
We'll see. Drew was there recently.
Yeah.
As well.
Did you make it to Shinjuku at all?
I did. I stayed in Shinjuku for a week.
Okay.
You're in an Airbnb, right?
Yeah, in an Airbnb.
That sounds awesome.
It was
They are
great.
really good.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to do the trains? Am I supposed to buy each ticket every single time? Because that's what I did.
That was
No, you're not
that was
supposed to.
that was what. So when we were going on a regular basis, it was before smartphones. So
Yeah.
it was only that last time we went was when the iPhone was out.
Yeah.
But
There's a card
we
you can get, right?
definitely-
Yes.
Yes.
So there's Suica and Passmo, which are basically interchangeable. It's a smart card. You can actually get them from the machines and sign up. If that person is leaving Tokyo, they're planning on going to like Osaka or somewhere else, I would also recommend getting the JR Pass that you have to order ahead of time before you go to Japan.
You can't get it in Japan, right?
No, you can't get it in Japan. You basically get like this thing mailed to you that you redeem at the train station, at one of the JR stations. So that does two things. One, it allows you to take book JR tickets from one city to the other and you can take the bullet trains and everything else. But it also allows you to ride any of the JR lines within Tokyo. So like the Yamanote line, which pretty much gets you most places.
Right.
You can just like go through the gate with an attendant in and out, and you don't have to buzz in or anything. But the Passmo and Suica I think are kind of, because like Drew, you had to calculate how much each ride was, right? Like figure out how much.
It wasn't hard. Like you just go up and you look and say, I'm at this station, and then you look at the station you need to go to, and it'll say like 210 yen or whatever. Then
But if you're trying to
in.
run, right, like you can't like stop, or I don't know how
Right.
much like sort of dashing you had to do between stations. But yeah, basically it's like a smart card. So just like any sort of mass transit system, you just like buzz in and it just deducts from the card, and you can reload the card.
And that stuff is like built into iPhones over there and other phones.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Suica cards, I
It's
think,
built
is
into a
part
lot of phones, like, but the cards, especially
Yeah.
for a tourist, right? It's
Right.
easier just to buy the card.
Yeah, I don't even know if you could use a US phone with it if it's something specific to those models, or if there's a way to
think so. It's not specific to the model. It's still art like that, but I don't know. I just use the card. And then is he just asking for like travel advice or what?
No,
to
he's just
do,
like
or?
just any advice for a first time visitor to the area. And
Okay.
I would say like there was a Sega arcade there. There's a bunch of, I feel like there's multiple Yodobashi camera locations around Shinjuku that like you're gonna find the gaming one, but also just like I've had a lot of fun just going and looking at fucking cameras and all the tech. And I don't know if it's the same way anymore, but there was definitely like it was a lot of fun to just go look at all the crazy stuff. I ended up buying like a G-Shock watch one day. Like, oh yeah, this is this is actually like a decent price for this thing, and like all kinds of weird stuff.
I think there's a couple things. One is I actually wrote a blog post on this at I'm going to promo my own thing, stevelin.com. It's like basically how to shop for games in Japan. And I'm also here to dispel the notion of the raid actually happening.
I feel like you have been the number one person who has led me to think like maybe the raid is no longer possible.
Not in the way that was originally envisioned in terms of going to Tokyo and like going through Akiba and just like sort of cleaning up, grabbing a beef bowl and then flying out. Yeah. The prices are very high.
Like everyone just understood that there was a world market for used video games, and now they price accordingly. It used to be that if you went to TGS or if you went to any of the other shows like the AM show or anything like that, that wasn't as big for like foreign press, the prices were very cheap. If you went out for TGS but showed up a week early, the prices were great, and you would go back 2 days later and see that they had gone around and marked everything up because they knew a bunch of foreigners were coming in, and they would pay anything. I saw a guy in there like a week before the show, and he had a stack of PC Engine games, just mostly CDs, but he had a stack like this high, just he was
like
holding,
a yard,
and he was just adding more to the stack and buying all of them. He was a French dude.
Yeah.
And he was just like stocking up and just like, here you go, I'm buying all these and getting the fuck out of town. I'm like, yeah, that guy knows how to do it.
Yeah. I mean, you won't get that in the big cities anymore. I think how you're describing it is it used to be you would go in and there would be sort of deals all around you.
Yeah.
Right.
And you would find price differences of $40 or $60 US just by walking up the street, by going from like, even just like going from Trader 1 to Trader 2.
Right.
They would have different prices for similarly, for similar quality items.
Right. And nowadays it's like there's a lot of stuff that's like eBay parody. There are still deals to be found, but you really have to look. Yeah. Which is like one of my tips is like go in with a shopping list. Don't be like I'm gonna look for Neo Geo games. It's like know what you're looking for, right? And like Osaka's better. Like Den Town's still expensive, but there are outskirts cities and shops that are much better. But yeah, if you're going game shopping, there's some tips on there. There's a lot of cool places there's tons of cool stuff to see. The biggest thing is like experience the food. Like the food in Japan is unbelievable. Don't go to McDonald's or KFC.
But also, I might say that's worth checking out at least once, because it is just a little different and that's fun and weird.
Right. So like especially like every month or so they cycle in a new weird burger at McDonald's. That's always fun. I went to KFC because I was there for Christmas Eve.
Oh, so you got the Christmas bucket.
Yeah, I got the Christmas bucket. I got my little Christmas champagne, the Kentucky champagne. But
famous Kentucky champagne.
Yeah, it was amazing. But there's so much good stuff, and going out of your comfort zone a little bit, especially if you're sort of wary about food. Like there's just so much. I mean, Drew, it sounded like you really kind of pushed yourself as well, right?
Oh yeah, all foods, all food groups in Japan, ramen, gyoza, Koko Ichibanya.
Oh yeah, curry.
So good.
There's tons of great curry there.
I think the only thing I was very wary of going to Japan was that I don't eat a lot of seafood. And there's plenty to eat around. You just maybe just don't go to the sushi boat place and pick stuff up. And also so I've softened on that. Like I'll eat sushi. I don't have a problem with it anymore. I've grown up, as they say. But I still don't want to eat anything that is actively alive.
Yeah.
Like the whole check out this octopus. We're cutting pieces off it. Like, no, that's messed up.
I don't think I saw any of that.
It's uncool.
I saw the one where they pour soy sauce on it and it kind of like moves around because of the sodium. The soy sauce. I didn't have anything alive, but I did have weird stuff like I had pig testicle and grilled salamander and stuff like that.
How was pig testicle? I mean, assume it just tastes like how it was prepared. It's not necessarily.
Yeah. I mean, it's the sauce and everything. You don't really taste it.
If you're weird about seafood, I would not worry about Japan too much. There's a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, there's tons.
Yeah, and also I was watching a YouTube. I'm prepping videos for one of the PAX panels. I'm going to be on Pat Bear's 404 in it at PAX, and so I've been watching a lot of videos. To kind of get ready for that, and found one. It's a mukbang video of this Japanese woman eating a whole fucking lot of food, and she will put raw eggs on stuff, and the subtitles it comes up and says like, "Don't worry, salmonella is not a problem in Japan."
Yeah, they serve chicken sashimi.
Yeah. That actually is still pretty risky from what I understand.
Oh, really?
But like the eggs are fine. Like room temperature eggs are all over the place.
And believe me, they love to undercook some eggs out there. I feel like you go to a hotel, get the American breakfast, and it comes with scrambled eggs, and it shows up, and you're like, man, this is like
do you have a microwave?
Practically a puddle. Yeah. I like my eggs dry as hell, so that's whatever. Neither here nor there. But
Japan is awesome. Hopefully, it has fun.
Yeah. Like the game shops, while expensive, still really fun to go to.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, yeah.
Walking down the aisles, there's some really cool stuff there.
Yeah, and I would say even even if the pricing is not amazing, like there is something to be said for like a memento.
Yeah. Instant gratification.
I got a couple.
It's
that's
right there. Right. Yeah.
And that was what led to that. The darkest holes were like instant gratification combined with like, well, these prices are still pretty good. And that's why I started collecting Neo Geo stuff for a while there. And eventually you've purchased all the games. Like for a while, was purchasing multiple copies of Samurai Showdown 2 because they were like 200 yen.
Right.
And the idea the very idea that I could buy a game so great that was originally so much money for next to nothing. I bought them and brought them back as gifts for people. I gave, like people that don't even own a Neo Geo.
That's like me giving out Tetris.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah, right.
Like, here you go. Here's a copy of Samurai 1 or Samurai 2.
Yeah.
And then after I had picked up all the games that were under 1,000 yen, then it became like, well, what's under 5,000 yen?
What's under 10,000?
What's under 10,000 yen? And then I ended up with a copy of Mark of the Wolves for $1,400.
Mark of the Wolves?
Wolves,
yes.
Yeah. Which it sounds like the price of that is still right around there.
Yeah.
These
Well,
days,
I mean, when I was in the outskirts, I saw like Saturn discs for 10 yen, which is 8 cents or something like that, 8, 9 cents. And it's just like, I don't want to even take
I ended up
home.
buying multiple, it was the Virtua Fighter stuff for Saturn where it's like the pictured photo
the photo discs, right.
Like those were just in a bin next to the register for 10 yen.
Right.
And I'm like, well, let's get some of these.
Then you have to take it home.
Yeah, then I had to take it all home. But those were the days when I was packing suitcase inside of a suitcase. So you just take it out and just fill it up. And I've got, Masterpiece Optimus Prime and all these Neo Geo carts.
Oh, the toy stores. Yeah, that too.
That stuff's a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Nakano Broadway. Some of the toy stores there are amazing.
Yeah, that's an amazing area.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's going to do it. So Steve, it's obviously Video Game History Foundation. It's gamehistory.org, right?
Yeah, gamehistory.org/donate if you would like to contribute to our efforts. We are a nonprofit.
Yeah, so that's like tax deductible.
Yeah,
even with the Patreon donations.
Yeah,
that's good. That's good to hear.
We're still working on getting. I mean, you get a receipt, I think. From that stuff. But yeah, we just kicked off on Monday. We have a lot of work ahead of us. This week we're all at GDC, so if emails are a little bit slow, that's kind of why we're really talking to developers here and getting them to submit their stuff. And
how has that gone so far? It seems like that a lot of companies, like the video game industry being so secretive, like the number of things that they would go like, oh, these are trade secrets. We can't let anyone, we have to destroy all this stuff.
Companies, not so much, individuals a lot. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
So we're getting a lot of, hey, I worked at this company many years ago, or, a lot of times it's just talking to them about what they have done and kind of, sparking those memories and saying like, oh, I might have that in a garage. And that's happened a lot, right? Yeah. Where it's like, oh yeah, this is, just sitting around.
Cool.
So I also want to say, I'm honored to be here, especially for Drew's last episode and for, speaking from outside duder, you've just given us amazing, like tons of hours of just amazing entertainment. We're really going to miss you on the show, but really looking forward to what you do next, and definitely best of luck.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah. And that's of course, this is not Drew's last day, so there'll be stuff on the site
this
week, and Friday's the last day, so come by for Unprofessional Fridays, and we'll chop it up, hang out. And also on Friday we're gonna go through all the Switch stuff.
Yes,
separately from UPF, we'll run a stream and play some of that stuff. We've got some people coming in the office because they're in town for GDC to show off some stuff. I think that Steve Gaynor guy is gonna come by.
No, everybody's Steve Gaynor.
Yeah,
on the GDC
we're going to get a
badges.
lot of Steve Gaynors coming through. A lot of them. All right, that's it for the Giant Bombcast for this week. We will be back next week where we will be in a post-Switch world. Shudder to think.